My daily take over at HartmannReport.com today. Well, first of all, it's titled, "Have Human Hunt Clubs Come to America?" This time wearing badges and body armor. And, you know, Donald Trump's presidency now has a human body count. An undocumented farm worker in Ventura County, California said, "We really feel like we're being hunted. We're being hunted like animals." This person told a reporter for The Guardian. I've seen this movie before, or at least where it leads. Back in the late 1980s and early 1990s, I spent a fair amount of time in Colombia on behalf of the German-based international relief organization I've worked with for more than half my life. I shared the story in a book about those experiences, The Prophet's Way, and detailed one of the hunt clubs that I ran across in Bogota, Colombia. These were mostly middle-class European ancestry, in other words, white men, many of them off-duty cops, who go out at night in camo with high-powered rifles and night vision gear to hunt dark-skinned, they called them los gamines, the million or so street children who commit much of the petty and often some of the serious crime in that city. Afterwards, they go drinking and partying, celebrating their kills. Some of the clubs even have names. The one that I ran across was called Cazadores de Ciervos. Forgive my terrible Spanish. It means the deer hunters. Hunt clubs, now this is my term, and it was the term that the people that I was staying with in Bogota used, but it's not, you know, what you find in the media that much. Anyhow, hunt clubs during that era, what these men were doing was called social cleansing, or in Spanish, limpieza social, and again, forgive my terrible Spanish. And in addition to killing kids, they also targeted for beatings or death homeless people, sex workers, LGBTQ people, drug users, and others they labeled as undesirable. As Amnesty International noted in a 1993 press release, quote, "There is concern for the safety of thousands of street children in Bogota following the appearance on 11 August 93 of posters in the city center inviting them to attend their own funerals. Those posters, which announce the extermination of, quote, delinquent street children, end quote, are signed in the name of industrialists, shopkeepers, and civic groups. There have been an increasing number of reports of killings of the so-called social undesirables, the chabols sociales, in what are routinely called social cleanup operations, generally attributed to shadowy death squads," end of quote. But the hunt clubs of Colombia in the 80s and 90s were pikers compared to Trump, Miller, Homan, and Noem et al., compared to what they're running today in America. So far, since Trump took over their operations, they killed at least 40 people, both in their so-called detention facilities, their concentration camps, and on the streets of our cities, and imprisoned more than 70,000 men, women, and children in over 230 concentration camps. And Trump just cut off funding for medical services for those in the camps, so expect those numbers to grow quickly. And they get to go hunting. Supervisory Border Patrol agent Charles Exum, for example, reportedly bragged to his fellow ICE Hunt Club members that when he shot Miramar Martinez in Chicago, in the Chicago suburb of Brighton Park, there were, quote, 5 shots and 7 holes. Following day, he shared with his ICE buddies a text message saying, "Cool, I'm up for another round to F around and find out." After shooting Renee Good 5 times for daring to tell him to have a nice day, ICE Hunt Club member Jonathan Ross called her an effing bitch. And when 2 ICE thugs murdered Alex Preddy, they rolled his body over to count the bullet holes as nearby agents laughed and applauded. Like the Hunt Club members in Bogota, today's ICE Hunt Club members, under color of law and with the approval of Brett Kavanaugh and the applause of Trump's senior officials, pick out people based on how dark their skin is and routinely kick in brown-skinned people's doors or drag them out of their cars before assaulting, robbing, raping, and even killing them. And while the Hunt Club members in Bogota only occasionally wear masks or balaclavas to conceal their identity, ICE Hunt Club members, they can do it all the time. America has, at least for the last few generations, always considered ourselves better than this. These ICE hunt clubs don't operate in secret. They wear concealed badges. They draw salaries from your and my tax dollars. They joke about murder and violence in their text messages. They pose for photos with their victims. And they know, absolutely know, that powerful people will protect them. After all, the Vice President of the United States said they have absolute immunity from prosecution. But that protection only works if the rest of us stay quiet. The hunt clubs in Colombia that I saw didn't largely vanish because they had a moral awakening in that country. They ended when the public finally said no and forced accountability. And the country today, Colombia, shudders every time that story is told. History tells us unambiguously how this sort of disgrace ends. Every modern society that normalizes hunts of the poor, the dark-skinned, the undocumented, or the politically inconvenient eventually discovers that the culturally acceptable definition of undesirable keeps expanding. Today it's brown-skinned immigrants. Tomorrow it's white protesters. They've already started that, by the way, building a database of domestic terrorists who film them and then revoking their access to, like, TSA PreCheck. Then journalists. They just raided the home of Washington Post reporter Hannah Nathanson. Then judges. They arrested Judge Hannah Dugan. Then anybody who won't clap loudly enough. Colombia learned this lesson the hard way, as did Germany, Chile, and Argentina. So did the American South after Reconstruction, when posses and night riders were praised as patriots, until in the 50s and 60s we finally admitted to ourselves what and who they really were and did something about it. But here we are again. The people running today's ICE hunt clubs may feel untouchable now. After all, people like them always do. But history keeps receipts. And history is utterly merciless with those who choose to hunt human beings.
There's a knock in the daylight, no name on the door. Boots on the gravel, heard that sound before. They say it's the law, say it's order and peace, but I've seen what happens when mercy leaves. They don't call it a hunt, they don't say the word, they just lower their voices and sharpen the terms. Have hunt clubs come to America now, with badges and bonuses, sworn oaths and bows. They say it's protection, they say it's the plan, but someone's always prey when the hunter's the state. History's whispering, gravel in the throat, same old lies wrapped in new codes, just following orders, keeping us safe. That's what they say right before the grave. First they pick the nameless, then those who won't bend. The list never shrinks, it just widens again. Have hunt clubs come to America now, funded by silence, defended by crowns. They joke in their messages, count what they've done, and swear it all ends with the last loaded gun. If this makes you uneasy, that's how it should feel. That's the sound of the light starting to peel. Every country that fell said, not us, not here. Right up to the moment it was crystal clear. Have hunt clubs come to America now? Look hard at the ground, see the tracks, see the vows. History's watching, it always keeps score. You can't hunt human beings and still call it law. One voice, one guitar, standing still. Because silence has never saved anyone yet.
Today we're reading from David Blight's book, Frederick Douglass, Prophet of Freedom. This is from the introduction. In his speech at the dedication of the National Museum of African American History and Culture in Washington, D.C., September 24, 2016, President Barack Obama delivered what he termed a, quote, clear-eyed view of a tragic and triumphant history of black Americans in the United States. He spoke of a history that is central to the larger American story, one that is both contradictory and extraordinary. He likened the African American experience to the infinite depths of Shakespeare and Scripture. The, quote, embrace of truth as best we can know it, said the president, is, quote, where real patriotism lies. Naming some of the major pivots of the country's past, Obama wrapped up his central theme in a remarkable sentence about the Civil War era. Quote, we've buttoned up our Union blues to join the fight for our freedom. We've railed against injustice for decade upon decade, a lifetime of struggle and progress and enlightenment that we see etched in Frederick Douglass's mighty leonine gaze, end quote. How Americans react to Douglass's gaze, indeed how we gaze back at his visage, and more important, how we read him, appropriate him, or engage his legacies, informs how we use our past to determine who we are. Douglass's life and writing emerged from nearly the full scope of the 19th century, representative of the best and the worst in the American spirit. Douglass constantly probed the ironies of America's contradictions over slavery and race. Few Americans use Shakespeare and the Bible to comprehend his story and that of his people as much as Douglass. And there may be no better example of an American radical patriot than the slave who became a lyrical prophet of freedom, natural rights, and human equality. Obama channeled Douglass in his dedication speech, knowingly or not. So do many people today. Born Frederick Augustus Washington Bailey, a slave, in Talbot County, Maryland, in February 1818, the future Frederick Douglass was the son of Harriet Bailey, one of 5 daughters of Betsy Bailey, and with some likelihood his mother's white owner. He saw his mother for the last time in 1825, though he hardly knew her. She died the following year. Douglass lived 20 years as a slave and nearly 9 years as a fugitive slave subject to recapture. From the 1840s to his death in 1895, he attained international fame as an abolitionist, editor, orator of almost unparalleled signature, and the author of 3 autobiographies that are classics of the genre. As a public man, he began his abolitionist career 2 decades before America would divide and fight a civil war over slavery that he openly welcomed. Douglass was born in a backwater of the slave society of the South, just as steamboats appeared in bays and on American rivers, and before the telegraph, the railroad, and the rotary press changed human mobility and consciousness. He died after the emergence of electric lights, the telephone, and the invention of the phonograph. The renewed orator and traveler loved and used most of these elements of modernity and technology. Douglas was the most photographed American of the 19th century, explained in this book, and especially by the intrepid research of 3 other scholars I write upon. Although it can never really be measured, he may also have been, along with Mark Twain, the most widely traveled American public figure of his century. By the 1890s, in sheer miles and countless number of speeches, he had few rivals as a lecturer in the golden age of oratory. It is likely that more Americans heard Frederick Douglass speak than any other public figure of his time. Indeed, to see or hear Douglass became a kind of wonder of the American world. He struggled as well with the pleasures and perils of fame as much as anyone else in his century, with the possible exceptions of General Ulysses S. Grant or P.T. Barnum. Douglass's dilemma with fame was a matter of decades, not merely of moments, and fraught with racism. The orator and writer lived to see and interpret black emancipation, to work actively for women's rights long before they were achieved, to realize the civil rights triumphs and tragedies of Reconstruction, and to witness and contribute to America's economic and international expansion in the Gilded Age. He lived to the age of lynching and Jim Crow laws, when America collapsed into retreat from the real victories and revolutions in race relations that he had helped to win. He played a pivotal role in America's second founding out of the apocalypse of the Civil War, and he very much wished to see himself as a founder and defender of the Second American Republic. In one lifetime of anti-slavery, literary, and political activism, Douglass was many things, and this set of apparent paradoxes makes his story so attractive to biographers, as well as to so many constituencies today. He was a radical thinker and a proponent of classic 19th century political liberalism. At different times, he hated and loved his country. He was a ferocious critic of the United States and all its hypocrisies, but also, after emancipation, became a government bureaucrat, a diplomat, and a voice for territorial expansion. He strongly believed in self-reliance and demanded an activist interventionist government at all levels to free slaves, defeat the Confederacy, and to protect black citizens against terror and discrimination. Douglass was a serious constitutional thinker, and few Americans have ever analyzed race with more poignancy and nuance than this mostly self-taught genius with words. He was a radical editor, writer, and activist. The book Frederick Douglass by David Blight.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Hey, top of the Wednesday to you. Is voter fraud the most dangerous political lie in American history? Also, the U.S. State Department, an employee, Sarah Rogers, has become the face of hate and MAGA in Europe. This is a fascinating story. I'll tell you about that in a few minutes. Also, what's the mystery of all the El Paso flights being halted for 10 days and then unhalted? I'll give you the details on that. In the second hour of our program, Lisa Graves is going to drop by. Why is Trump getting away with his paramilitary raids? Plus, what's up with the confiscated Georgia election ballots? And ICE doesn't need their masks. It turns out if you're an ICE agent, you're less likely to be killed than if you're an American school child. Guess who's not safe, though? Grandmothers. ICE has a terrible habit of arresting them and throwing them in detention. Also, the FDA declines to review a Moderna application for a new flu vaccine. Moderna has spent millions of dollars developing this new flu vaccine. They say it's more effective than any of the others, but it's an mRNA vaccine, which is why it's more effective. And Bob Kennedy has this thing about mRNA vaccines because, of course, he's not a doctor, he's a lawyer, so don't get me started. We'll talk about that in the second hour of the program. In the third hour of our program, why wisdom is almost always mistaken for a threat when it first appears. And Donald Trump goes after a Canadian bridge after his billionaire commerce secretary meets with the billionaire owner of a privately owned competing bridge. Can you spell corruption? So that's what's up for our program today. I want to start out with my op-ed today over at HartmannReport.com. It's titled, "Is Voter Fraud the Most Dangerous Political Lie in American History?" And the answer is quite simply yes. This is there's like two big lies that Donald Trump has been relying on for the last couple of years. The first is that he won the 2020 election. The second big lie, though, and this is the one that has been at the foundation, at the core of Republican voter suppression efforts, literally since the 1960s, is this argument that back in the 60s, it was they referred to them as Mexicans, now they're referred to as illegal aliens, are voting in the United States. Back in the 60s, in the 1964 election in Arizona, they had this thing called Operation Eagle Eye. It went all across the country in the 60s and 70s. And Operation Eagle Eye, in Arizona, it was William Rehnquist, William Rehnquist, the guy who ultimately would become the Chief Justice of the United States. At that time, he was just a lawyer in Phoenix, and he would stand outside these voting booths and try to intimidate brown and black people from voting, and Native Americans as well. So this has been around for a long, long time, and it's really, jacking up now, right? Yesterday, Republican Congressman Eli Crane of Arizona, a right-wing crackpot, lied through his teeth, saying, and this was, in congressional hearings yesterday, quote, he's talking about Democrats, they let millions of illegal aliens into the country. They set up sanctuary cities so you can't enforce these federal laws that are on the books that Congress has passed. Now they won't vote to stop these illegals from voting in our elections. If the American people don't understand what this is about, it's about one word. It always has been. That is power. They want power, and they need illegals to vote in our elections. That's why they don't care about fraud either. They want those votes as well. And then, Elon Musk writing, by ushering in vast numbers of illegals, they are importing voters. And then Donald Trump said, that's why they're allowing these people to come in, people that don't speak our language, they're signing them up to vote. And then J.D. Vance saying, loose border policies mean more Democrat voters pouring into the country. I mean, this is a major big lie. And we talked with Congressman Khanna about this yesterday, Congressman Ro Khanna of California. He suggested that the Democrats in the House of Representatives are very, very concerned about this big lie, because if let's say that in this election 10 seats flip from Republican to Democrat in the election this November. If the Republicans in those 10 districts, in each one of those 10 districts, can find any evidence at all of what they call voter fraud, anything at all, one undocumented person who's on a voter roll, whatever, then they will go to Mike Johnson and say, don't seat these Democrats. Instead, seat their Republican opponents or keep the seats open. And Mike Johnson has the power to do this. And, the Democrats are very concerned about this. And this is all based on this lie, this just, blatant, unambiguous lie that goes back, like I said, it goes back to the 1960s, that undocumented people are voting. Now, over at the Cato Institute, Stephen Ricker last week wrote an article titled, Trump's claims about non-citizens voting are false, we can prove it. The Heritage Foundation, these are two organizations funded by billionaires like the Koch brothers. The Heritage Foundation, they looked at non-citizen voting in the United States between 2003 and 2023. They audited billions of votes. They found 24 instances of non-citizens voting. That's 24 instances in a total of 20 years. Heritage then went back all the way back to 1982, the second year of the Reagan administration, and they found that there were 99 cases in 44 years. Not a single election in American history has ever been altered by non-citizens voting. And yet, non-citizen voting has been used by the Republicans to, in this last election, just a year and a half ago, to knock 4.2 million people off the voting rolls or prevent them from voting or refuse to count their votes. that, as Greg Palast has pointed out on this program multiple times, that's the only reason that Republicans control the House of Representatives and the White House right now, is because they were successful at preventing 4.2 million American citizens from having their votes counted. And they're trying to pick it up. They're trying to do even more. And now they've got this SAVE Act that says if you're a woman and your last name on your birth certificate, the name you were born with, is different from the name that's currently on your driver's license or passport, the name that you adopted from your husband when you got married, which 80% roughly of American women who get married do, then you can't vote either. And this has already passed the House of Representatives. And John Thune in the Senate last week said he's seriously considering bringing it up. And then you've got, the exact match, over 1 million votes. The people who voted by mail in the last election in 2024, their ballots were thrown out because some Republicans sat there and said, that signature doesn't look close enough to me. I mean, why? Because we're trying to keep non-citizens from voting. This is, FDR had something to say about this. I'm going to play some audio out of my computer here, guys. FDR had a comment about the big lie. You've heard this before on this program, but, it's good to insert it here. This is Franklin Delano Roosevelt, President of the United States in 1944, talking to the UAW.
The opposition in this year has already imported into this campaign a very interesting thing because it's fun. They have imported the propaganda technique invented by the dictators abroad.
Specifically Hitler.
Remember, a number of years ago, there was a book, Mein Kampf, written by Hitler himself. The technique was all set out in Hitler's book, and it was copied by the aggressors of Italy and Japan. According to that technique, you should never use a small falsehood, always a big one, for its very fantastic nature would make it more credible. If only you keep repeating it over and over and over again.
There you go. And that's what Trump has been doing with these lies. The lie about non-citizens voting, the lie about his having lost or not lost the 2020 election. 70% of Republicans now believe these lies, or believe the lie about the 2020 election. God only knows what percentage of Republicans believe that non-citizens are voting and it's a big problem. I'm guessing it's 95%. It's time to knock this down. I mean, the media has been asleep at the switch since 1964 when Republicans started this scam. It's a lie. And we don't need all these restrictions. Most countries don't even, many countries don't even have voter registration. You're automatically registered when you're born. We need our media to do their job.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
And let people know, explicitly let people know, that there is no problem of non-citizens voting anywhere in the United States. And welcome back. Kent in Humboldt, Iowa. Hey, Kent, what's on your mind today?
Hey, Tom, I agree wholeheartedly with your take about the voter fraud situation. I'm glad you're exposing the lie. More people need to hear it, and I agree with you on the media not doing their job. And it's just coming from a person formerly involved in the media. One reason I got involved in reporting was because I grew up in the Watergate area and remember watching the hearings and stuff on TV when I was in high school.
Yep, old Senator Sam.
Seeing people, good people on both sides of the aisle, Howard Baker, Sam Ervin, and the group, and actually digging down and getting at the truth and holding these people accountable that were part of the Nixon administration. And now it seems like, upon the death of Robert Redford and now the decline of the Washington Post, I reread All the President's Men, watched the movie, and I find it hard to believe that 1,000 people, if that's what it was with the FBI looking at these files, that somebody hadn't come forward and say, hey, look what the president did, allegedly.
That
has and files.
I suspect that the FBI agents first of all, disproportionately FBI agents are Republicans, but I'm guessing that there was some kind of loyalty test before any of those people were given access to those files.
Oh, definitely. And just to your viewers are following it too, but just watching today a little bit of the Bondi testimony
it's not
in front of the House. It's just unreal. Personal attacks on Zoe Lofgren and a lot of the rest of the representatives, and not being able to get straight answers on anything. And of course, the Republicans just kowtowing to her basically. And here's a softball question you can attack. And so it's unreal. But I just wanted to bring up the fact that how our country has changed in 50 years, and the fact that we did have a representative government, at least somewhat, to be able to dig down and find the truth and expose it and hold people accountable. And now there's no accounting. Yeah. And to speak to the hearings this morning, this is fascinating. The last time Pam Bondi came in, she brought with her what they call a burn book. And it's a big 3-ring binder that's organized by the names of the people on the committee. And it was things that she could say about each Democrat that would hurt them or make them look stupid or ridiculous. How much money did you take from Reid Hoffman? Stuff like that. Yeah. This morning, she brought today. Yes. Well, yeah, she brought the burn book with her, but the Democrats were ready for her this time. They said, we're not going to put up with that. We're just going to talk right over her. We're going to shut her down. And, the rules allow for that. And so Jim Jordan is having to back up the Democrats right now, and she's very unhappy with the fact that, and so she's resorting to things like, the Dow just passed 50,000. I mean, this is unprecedented. Donald Trump is the best president ever. He's the most transparent. She's just fluffing him. And, somebody, on Blue Sky said, Pam Bondi is to Donald Trump what Ghislaine Maxwell was to Jeffrey Epstein. And, a loyal female toady facilitator or whatever you want to call it. So, yeah, I'm with you. Kent, thanks a lot for the call. It's nice to hear from you. Appreciate it. 20 minutes past the hour. I'll be back with more of the news of the day and your calls in just a moment. Stay with us. Missed my opening rant today? It's usually published over at HartmannReport.com, where you can read it and share it with your friends for free. Check it out, HartmannReport.com. So what do we call the really, really mind-bogglingly rich? At the founding of the Republic, they were referred to as speculators or moneyed interests or aristocrats. In the years leading up to the Civil War, we called them the cotton lords and the plantation aristocracy. In the late 19th century, they were the robber barons. In the 1930s, FDR called them the economic royalists. But since the Reagan Revolution, we've just called them billionaires. And now, some of them want to call themselves tech bros. That's kind of a good thing, tech is positive and bros, like Mark Zuckerberg saying we need more masculine energy in American business culture. So we need a new phrase. I would like to suggest the morbidly rich. Morbidly suggests unhealthy. And the vast riches that some of these people have is unhealthy to our democracy, particularly since 5 Republicans on the Supreme Court said that morbidly rich people can buy politicians. And it's unhealthy for them, too. So morbidly rich. There's an op-ed over at HartmannReport.com all about it. Check it out.
They say the vote is sacred. Then they call it a crime. They whisper fraud like a loaded gun, pointed at the ballot, not the one who lost. Same old lie, just a newer tongue. Power don't ask permission, it just takes the cost. They lost the count, so they burn the trust. Call the people cheaters, call the truth a bluff. If votes don't matter, then silence must. That's how a republic turns into dust.
If the vote is a lie, then the lie is the law. If the count can be clear, What are we fighting for? You don't steal elections with tanks or troops. You just teach the people not to believe the truth.
60 years deep, same dirty play, different faces, same script, same shade. Say it loud enough, say it slow, soon the crowd repeats what they're told to know. Not fraud in the votes, fraud in the claim, not fear cheating, fear change. When losing's illegal and winning's divine, that's not democracy, that's the end of the line. Every empire falls the moment the people stop believing their voice matters.
If the vote is a lie, and the lie has won, no crown, no throne, just a rigged outcome. This is insecurity, this is control. And the first thing buried is the people's soul.
The most dangerous lie is the one that tells you your voice never mattered at all.
24 minutes past the hour. Welcome back. So a senior State Department official, Sarah B. Rogers, has been traveling around Europe, apparently with a big pot of money, and meeting with right-wing and neo-Nazi groups and trying to, to help them out. I mean, this is pretty amazing. The Guardian, Jason Wilson, writing about this. Rogers is the Undersecretary of State for Public Diplomacy. This is a position that was created back just before, well, it was 1999, as I recall. And, it was supposed to be a person who would kind of, build and cement our relationships with our allies, particularly in Europe. But her posts on Twitter, for example, she has referred to migrants in Germany as, quote, barbarian rapist hordes. In Sweden, she says, if your government cared about women's safety, it would have a different immigration policy. She talks about advocates of unlimited third world immigration, et cetera. And last week, the Financial Times reported that she was meeting with AfD in Germany, the neo-Nazi party. She met with Markus Frohmeyer, which is their parliamentarian, and he posted on X that she said that Washington is seeking a strong German partner. Now, this is the guy who, according to Der Spiegel, quote, sent from the Russian, it was the subject of a strategy paper sent from the Russian Duma to the highest levels of leadership in the presidential administration. That would be the Russian president, which argued for supporting the candidacy of Frohmeyer, the German candidate, in 2017, the German federal election. And if he could get elected, then according to this, this paper from Russian intelligence to Putin, quote, we will have our own absolutely controlled member of parliament in the Bundestag. She's also frequently visited Russia and Crimea since it was occupied. And it's just remarkable. Frohmeyer, excuse me, not Sarah, but Frohmeyer. In fact, his wife was a Russian pro-government writer. She used to write for Izvestia. The German state has determined that AfD is a threat to democracy. This is who this administration is helping out. This is who this administration is lifting up. This is who this administration wants to give your and my taxpayer dollars to. It's really mind-boggling. 26 minutes past the hour. These amazing hearings with Pam Bondi. I'll give you a quick summary and also what's going on with the FAA in El Paso right after the break, and I'll pick up your calls. So what's on your mind? Stick around. We'll be right back. It's the Thom Hartmann Program, defending America from the weapons of mass deception.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
Speaking the truth, Pam Bondi and Donald Trump would really rather you don't know all about. We'll be right back. Today we're reading The Shadow President, The Truth About Mike Pence by Michael D'Antonio. This is from the first chapter. For decades, Pence had presented himself as a humble servant who could be entrusted with power because he was at heart a mild-mannered Midwesterner. Friends and foes alike said his major character trait was extreme niceness. When given the opportunity, Pence described himself as a true Hoosier, son of Indiana, who was a Christian, a conservative, and a Republican in that order. This is how he had introduced himself to the country at the Republican National Convention 6 months earlier. The list contrasted with the usual pledge politicians make to put country first. This is what President Obama did after the 2016 election when he said, "We are not Democrats first, we are not Republicans first, we are Americans first." The vice president's self-declared identity revealed both his priorities and the source of his power. For 30 years, he had helped lead the Republican Party into a closer alliance with preachers who were turning evangelical Christianity from a religion into a political crusade that engaged in a culture war with non-believers. The aim of many was to destroy abortion rights, roll back the equality gained by gay citizens, and prepare the nation for the second coming of Christ. Pence and others used martial metaphors and considered themselves warriors of the Christian right, both besieged and called upon to fight. Quote, "Those who would have us ignore the battle being fought over life, marriage, and religious liberty have forgotten the lessons of history," said Pence in 2010. "America's darkest moments have come when economic arguments trumped moral principles." Pence's allies in his war included hugely wealthy donors who, despite their vast wealth accumulated at a time of historic inequality, also posed as victims. As libertarians in the mold of Ayn Rand's cardboard characters, they felt inhibited in the pursuit of even greater riches by a government that imposed foolish regulations and would redistribute their wealth to the supposedly indolent poor. Starting with this perspective, they denied the science behind environmental protection, demanded tax cuts for themselves, and insisted on massive reductions in programs serving anyone who wasn't rich. The victimhood claimed by both the libertarians and the Christian right permitted the construction of an alternative reality that denied their own power and masked their ambition to make politics and culture conform to an ideology that included white Christian supremacy and predatory capitalism. It also denied the progress they had made in their construction of their own political might. With his oath of office, Vice President Pence became both the free marketer's hero and the most successful Christian supremacist in American history. Most of Pence's life had been preparation for this moment, and possibly one more. His lifelong goal, set when he was a boy, was the Oval Office itself. Remarkably, he had reached this point by tying his fate to Donald J. Trump, a man whose immorality in the form of lying, cheating, and deceiving in every aspect of his life, from his marriage to his businesses, had made him a living exemplar of everything that Christianity and conservatism abhorred. However, this record also suggested that Pence was more likely to assume the highest office in the land than most vice presidents who had come before. To put it bluntly, Trump was vulnerable to impeachment. If this occurred, Pence would see the hand of God at work in his elevation to the presidency. In the meantime, he would wait and watch. On Inauguration Day, with Pence looking on, a slightly stooped Donald Trump stepped forward when it was his turn to face the Chief Justice of the United States Supreme Court, John Roberts. Beside Trump stood his wife, Melania, the former fashion model, who held two Bibles, Lincoln's and Trump's own. At the stroke of noon, the president-elect raised his right hand and placed his left on the Bibles. As he did this, Trump's family members and hundreds of political and government figures strained to see the moment. Trump and Pence were a study in contrast. At age 58, Pence appeared trim, perhaps even athletic, and could have passed for a man 10 years younger. His jacket was neatly buttoned, his hands were clasped at his waist, and his smooth face was set in a half smile. Mere feet away, in sum, he resembled a small-town pastor, or maybe even a funeral director. Mere feet away, a stern-faced 70-year-old Trump stood with his coat hanging open like a caftan to reveal a long red necktie. Despite much cosmetic intervention, he looked old and tired. At the conclusion of the presidential oath, which had been voiced by 44 presidents before him, Trump said the words, "So help me God," and accepted the congratulations of those closest to him with a thin-lipped, toothless grin. He then delivered a 15-minute speech replete with distortions and falsehoods that were his trademark. He declared that America was awash with crime and despair and under constant attack. This American carnage stops right here and stops right now, said Trump. It was the most remembered phrase of the address. That was some weird S-word, former President George W. Bush was heard to remark as he left the inaugural stand. Weird was the mildest word that one could attach to the 45th President of the United States as he launched an administration that would be stained by scandal and corruption so broad it defied a citizen's ability to grasp. Cronyism, secrecy, and nepotism would flourish. Presidential lies, daily cataloged by the Washington Post and others, would come at the rate of more than 150 per month. From the moment of his oath, Mike Pence, the vice president, faced the historic, some would say daunting, challenge of dealing with an erratic and undisciplined commander-in-chief. The book, The Shadow President, The Truth About Mike Pence. Did you know that every weekday we send out an email before the show giving you all the topics coming up so you can be fully informed and ready to interact with our program? Or that after the show we send out Sue's Stack, a list of every topic I've discussed along with clickable hot links to every source of information I've shared with you on the air? It's all completely free and available over at thom.tv, THOM.tv. Check it out.
We watched it happen in real time. Broken doors, thin blue lines, hands in cuffs, blood on stone, screams echo through the Capitol dome. Now they say it was calm and clean, say the violence was overseen, say the lies are what we saw, say the mob was just the law. Don't tell me it didn't happen, don't tell me I didn't see. You can burn the books, rewrite the screen, but you can't erase what lives in me. You can call it peace, you can call it right, dress the wreckage up in red, white, and blue. But when a government lies about violence, it's warming up to do it again to you.
35 minutes past the hour. Welcome back. So the FAA had put a 10-day ground stop at the El Paso airport. Turns out, apparently, and this story is still kind of bits and pieces are coming out, but apparently what happened is that at a nearby Air Force base, the Department of Defense, the Pentagon, was going to be testing super powerful lasers that can shoot drones out of the air. And the FAA got wind of it, but the Pentagon never notified them because Pete Hegseth is an incompetent drunk. And so, you know, the Pentagon's a mess right now, and all the really competent people, particularly the ones who are black or female, have been fired. And so the FAA just said, hey, if they're shooting off lasers around here, we're going to stop the airplanes. But it really got their attention, and apparently things are working out. Meanwhile, the hearing where Bondi, Pam Bondi, somebody on Blue Sky said Pam Bondi is to Donald Trump what Ghislaine Maxwell was to Jeffrey Epstein. And I think it's a great analogy. That hearing just adjourned. And, you know, the last time she testified, she brought with her this burn book, this list of all, you know, there's tabs in it. It's a big 3-ring binder with tabs in it. And each tab had the name of a Democratic member of Congress who was on the committee. And so whenever a Democrat would ask her a question, she'd flip open the book, and then she'd, instead of answering their question, she'd say, well, didn't you take a $5,000 contribution from a bad guy? You know, she'd just try to burn them, right? Well, and she got away with it last time. So this time, the Democrats came ready for her, because the House rules are that if you're not being responsive to the question from the member of the House, and you're just going off on a rant or something, the member of the House can interrupt you and stop you from talking. And Jim Jordan is being forced to enforce that rule, and the Democrats just are not letting Pam Bondi get away with her filibusters and her blithering. And she was reduced at one point to going on and on and on about how, well, Donald Trump is the best, but he's the most transparent president. We got the Dow at 50,000. You know, it's pathetic. But, you know, Thomas Massey's on this committee. He called her out. He's a Republican. She is engaged in the biggest cover-up of a criminal scandal involving a president of the United States in the history of this republic, and maybe in the history of any major democracy in the world. Jamie Raskin, there was if you go to one of those 4 computers that Pam Bondi said are available to members of Congress to look through the 3 million documents, over 170 members of Congress wanted to look at them, right? Here's 4 computers, guys. Good luck. So, but there was a search engine. And so he plugs in Donald Trump's name and the Epstein documents and gets over 1 million hits. This 38,000 times that Donald Trump appears in the Epstein documents, this number that has been cited for weeks now, that's the number after the redactions. If you take out the redactions, which is what the members of Congress were able to do when they, went into this room with the 4 computers, Donald Trump is apparently, from what Jamie Raskin said, I'm taking this seriously, he's a good guy, constitutional law professor. Donald Trump appears in the Epstein files literally more than anybody else, other than Jeffrey Epstein, more than 1 million times. It's just mind-boggling. All right, so what's on your mind today? Laura in Edmonds, Washington. Hey, Laura, thank you for listening to KODX. What's up?
Hi.
Hey.
Yeah, speaker. This is not really on your subject, but it just seems to me that the votes of farmers, and like in the Midwest and elsewhere, should be in play for Democrats if we go after them.
I agree.
And, despite the propaganda from their AM radio televangelists and Fox News telling us all how the economy is great, I think the farmers are selling last year's crop at a loss. Mm-hmm. And they're still holding soybeans and rice, but China is invested in a grain terminal with elevators in Brazil because China's looking after their own best interests.
Yep, and they're now also buying from Argentina, because when Donald Trump gave $40 billion to Argentina, Milei, the president of Argentina, used that money to do away with his tariffs on Chinese goods, and so China is suddenly buying soybeans from Argentina now, subsidized by our tax dollars.
Right, and the only area of agriculture that was profitable last year was cattle. And now Trump's importing foreign beef.
That's right. Yep.
And then the industry that would do best with intelligent immigration reform is any farmer that has a crop that needs to be picked.
Yeah.
So it seems that it would be in their own best interest for farmers to vote for Democrats.
One would think, Laura. One would think. Laura, thank you very much for calling and pointing that out. It's nice to hear from you. I appreciate the call. Thank you. Dave in Hoffman Estates, Illinois. Hey, Dave, what's on your mind today?
Hey, Tom, got a question about you mentioned about that SAFE Act or the voter registration.
Right.
Got the one in, had Ivanka Trump ever changed her registration to Kushner? She said a couple years back that she wanted to go by Ivanka Kushner. Just like...
Well, in that case, maybe she can't vote.
Well, by their rules, or is it, good enough for me, but not for thee? But
well, it's I'm sorry. Finish your thought.
I was just going to say, to finish the thought, that like in Trump's first term, remember he was against chain migration, except for his in-laws. They got in by chain migration.
I was just going to say, these guys are all hysterical about felons and immigrants, right? And Donald Trump has married 2 immigrants, and he's a felon. What the hell?
Yeah. But I just got to thinking that food for thought about that they're getting all over these married people because they don't have the same last name or something that they had on their registration, and I just wonder, does she have the same? Does she have changed over to Kushner, or is it still Ivanka Trump?
I don't know, Dave. It's an interesting question. I just don't know the answer. Dave, thanks for the call. Tim in New Berlin, Wisconsin, listening on Civic Media. Hey, Tim, what's up?
Hey, Tom, I just have to ask you a question again. But first of all, you have a national platform, and you need to be responsible because you have many liberals out there, cockroaches, that listen to what you say.
Cockroaches? You're comparing my listeners to insects?
You're smearing and calling Hitler.
Wait a minute, I'm smearing people and you're calling my listeners insects?
Pretty much, yeah.
Okay.
But the main thing, Tom, what part of illegal do you not understand? This is a country of legal immigrants. If you come here illegally, you're fine. But
Yeah.
if you come here illegally, we cease to be a country at all if we do not enforce our borders.
I agree.
And then why are you having a problem with ICE and the illegal immigrants? I would rather you worry about the people that they kill.
Yeah,
all the women
I'd be glad
kill.
to answer your question, Tim, if you'll let me.
Absolutely.
Okay. I have a friend who lives up in northern Michigan, and young woman, fell in love with a guy who owned a Mexican restaurant up there. This is during the Obama administration. And they got married, and they had a kid, and it turned out that he was an illegal immigrant, to use your phrase. He was undocumented. ICE showed up at the restaurant wearing windbreakers that said ICE on them. They had badges. They weren't wearing masks. They were very polite. I know these people quite well. And they said, you're here illegally, and you're going to have to leave the country. And we're going to give you 3 weeks to do it. And, here's some resources, and et cetera. And so his wife, who, as I said, is an old, dear friend of my family, reached out to me. I reached out to Bernie Sanders, to Senator Sanders. He reached out to ICE and reached out to the Department of Justice. And everybody said, no, he's here illegally. He's got to go. So that couple and their now 4 children have been living in Mexico ever since then because Obama deported them. But Obama deported them politely. He did it nicely. Nobody got their face smashed in. Nobody got shot 10 times in the back. Nobody got shot 4 times in the face. Nobody got dragged out of a car and dragged by their hair across the snow. He did it respectfully. Obama deported more people every one of his 8 years than Donald Trump has in any of his 5 years. Go back and look up the numbers. And he did it reasonably. That's my objection, Tim. My objection is that this is not about immigration. This is about terrorizing the American people and trying to set up a police state.
Not at all. A person that rapes has a criminal record. They have no rights whatsoever.
They do have rights, but they should be in prison. I'm not disagreeing with you, Tim. And if somebody is a criminal, get them the hell out of this country. And frankly, if somebody is here without documentation, that needs to, they need to leave, and they need to do it the right way. Well, I'm all in favor of all that. What I'm not in favor of is having secret police with masks on their faces. Did you know, Tim, that in America, if you're an American school child, you're about 5 times more likely to die in any given year than any employee of ICE. And yet ICE has to, it's true. Look it up. There have been 2 ICE people who have died since 2003. 2. How many American school children have died since 2003? It's more dangerous to be an American school child, but these snowflakes, these pathetic man-child snowflakes are running around. Oh, we've got to cover our faces. We're so afraid somebody's going to know who we are. Oh, my God, they may know. Oh, come on, Tim. Respect your damn country.
No, you respect our country.
Yeah, right. Oh, God. Excuse me. 46 minutes past the hour. I'll be back with more of your calls in just a minute. Stick around.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit ThomHartmann.com for audio and video archives.
It's the place where smart people get their news, and right-wing calls are more than welcome. We'll be right back. And welcome back. Bjorn in Los Angeles. Hey, Bjorn, what's up?
Oh, it's so good to talk to you again, Tom. Thank you for. I especially love your show when you get to talk to people who are not of a like mind. That was really, really terrific.
I do too. I wish more of them would call in.
Well, listen, I want to talk to you about another way under which I'm a native Minnesotan, and this whole situation has been very personal to me. But Minnesota's under assault another way right now, which is that in the Boundary Waters Coon Area Wilderness, there's it's been this pristine area the biggest wilderness east of the Mississippi that's been protected for decades. Just a few years ago, a resolution was passed to not protected against mining for 20 years at least. And recently, in January, I think it was January, Pete Stauber introduced a joint resolution that uses the CRA, I think that's the Congressional Review Act, to overturn this 20-year Boundary Waters mining ban. If it's passed, and it's going to the Senate as soon as today, if it's passed, it will allow this Chilean company to do copper mining up there. Copper mining has just a horrible history of pollution. It would be on an area called Birch Lake, which is just adjacent to and flowing into not only the Boundary Waters Canoe Wilderness, but all the Voyageur National Park, and our neighbors, Ontario, have got the provincial park.
Who's paying off the Republicans to push this?
Yeah, who is ever paying off the Republicans to push this? I don't know.
The mining interests, I'm assuming.
As our friend Randy, right, probably. And as our buddy Randy Rhodes says, in chaos, they can steal. Yeah. And that is what I perceive is going on right here. And it's tragic because this is going to be such a lasting, devastating effect. We might be able to get our government back in order. Yeah. But if they do this copper nickel, it happened in Sudbury, Ontario decades ago, and just devastated just an enormous swath of beautiful, pristine wilderness. They got the copper and left behind a moonscape. Yeah. Yeah, mining could be very destructive. Bjorn, thank you. Thanks for the information on that. I'll have to look into it more. Thank you. Encourage people to call their senators.
You got it. Thank you. Bob in Melbourne, Florida, listening to WMNF. Hey, Bob, what's up?
Oh, another great day in paradise down here. Cool. I'm a long-time listener, 73rd time caller. Yep. The Florida legislature just passed a law that says that all driver's license tests will be administered in English only. The irony of that entire thing is that Florida is a Spanish word meaning land of flowers. I just thought I'd...
Oh, God. You know, I am not, I get the whole English only thing, you know, as a way of, you know, I, Claudius, you know, we are ein Volk, ein Reich, ein Führer, you know, and all that kind of stuff. On the other hand, I'm not all that bent out of shape about it. Does this really offend you?
The thing about it is so the test is only in English. So you get.
I lived in Germany, and to get a German driver's license, I had to speak German.
Yeah. Well, hang on a minute. Because if you're a foreign tourist and you land in Orlando and you want to go to SeaWorld, are they going to make sure that you speak English?
Well, no, I think that's a whole completely different thing. That's a very different thing than getting a driver's license.
The reason they're doing it is to eliminate people from the voting rolls.
I don't think so. I think this is just. I think they're just being mean. Frankly, they're just trying to be hostile. Bob, thanks for the call. We'll be right back. Hey, thanks so much for sharing our program and for reaching out to our stations and sponsors and letting them know that you're listening. It really means a lot to us. Human beings have a couple of unique characteristics. The first is that we can be very tender and loving and concerned and caring toward people we perceive as being our group, us. We can also be extraordinarily violent against people that we consider to be them, if we think of them or this other as a threat. Probably the classic example of this is Adolf Hitler convincing Germans that, Jews were a threat to them and good Germans going along with the Holocaust. Well, this othering is built into our DNA. This is, ancient stuff. And the Republican Party, since the time of Nixon, when he started, picking up the white racist vote after Democrats laid it down in the 60s, the Republicans have been using this to try to other minorities in America as a political strategy. And this is really deadly stuff. There's a whole op-ed about it over at HartmannReport.com. Is othering human nature's deadliest instinct? Check it out. Calls here. Andre in Chicago. Hey, Andre, what's on your mind today?
Hello, good morning to you, Tom, and thank you for having me. How's your day going today?
So far, so good, Andre. How about you?
Yeah, I'm okay, thank you. First thing I'm going to say is that it amazes me how people call and they say they're upset with the migrants and call them rapists and whatnot. Well, if my memory served me correctly, Judge Kaplan said that Donald Trump raped E. Jean Carroll, for one thing, and even though Donald Trump hasn't killed anybody, he's responsible for many people getting killed. So
he killed a bunch of fishermen off the coast of Venezuela. Over 100 of them now.
Yes, he did. Yes, he did. So that caller was upset. But what I called you for, Tom, is this here, man. You know, a lot of time people get misinformation, and I think the leadership in this country should seize the opportunity when there's a teachable moment present itself to educate people, right? So here we have a picture that Donald Trump put up of Michelle and Barack Obama like monkeys.
Yeah.
Well, Tom, you know as well as I do that humans and monkeys share the same ancestor.
Yeah.
And people consider monkeys to be our cousins. I would have loved to see Barack Obama go on national TV, not a tweet, because everybody don't do the tweet, national TV, and break that down to people so that people can...
I agree, Andre. I was surprised that there wasn't a stronger response from them. Andre, thank you for the call, and thanks for pointing that out. John Parker's on the line with us. He's the host of The Gailey Show on KTNF every day at 2 p.m. Central Time. KTNF AM 950 in Minneapolis, our Minneapolis affiliate. Hey, John, how's everything in Minneapolis and St. Paul today?
Good morning, Tom. I'm not even quite sure where to start with everything that's happening here right now. So we're following a massive car crash in St. Paul that involved ICE agents pursuing an individual. At least 3 cars massively damaged right now. There's video of an injured person being put into an ambulance with a sheet over them. But in a video by a legal observer, the officer told the observer that the victim was still alive underneath the sheet. So there's photos and videos of about 100 people outside gathering, blowing whistles and filming what's going on. So we'll know more about that later today when we get, St. Paul Police Department releases information. For folks to know, this is still happening. Yesterday in St. Louis Park, which is a suburb on the western part of the Twin Cities, ICE agents were threatening observers with pepper spray as they were blowing whistles and filming those agents outside of a school and along other streets in the neighborhood. So they are still outside schools. They're still in restaurants. There was a chaotic scene in the Hennepin County Government Center yesterday where they were chasing an individual through the center and arresting him. So, they're still here and they're still being really aggressive. Other things that are happening, this is a fun story. Bloomington is another first ring suburb of the Twin Cities. And yesterday at a news conference, the police chief, Booker Hodges, announced that one of the members of a 30-person arrest in a prostitution sting is a federal contractor who does background checks for DHS and ICE. Yeah, he said it was, quote, "This is the most disturbing arrest that we've had here."
This was one of the men who was hiring underage girls or hiring women for prostitution?
So he was part of he was a member of the ring who were doing it, and he also was doing background checks for ICE agents and DHS employees.
Wow. Yeah. And he was trying to hook up with underage girls. Amazing.
And I don't know, so for folks who don't know Joe Thompson, he was the former acting U.S. attorney here in Minnesota. He resigned along with 12 others. There's been more since then, but the DOJ was trying to force him to investigate the widow of Renee Nicole Good as opposed to investigating Jonathan Ross, the man who killed her. Well, he resigned. Now he set up a defense law firm, and one of his first clients is Don Lemon.
Really?
So he's going after he's going after the Trump administration, which I find very, very interesting.
The backlash begins.
It does. It does. And we're actually finally getting some insight into what happens to the worst of the worst when they are deported from ICE. And this is a question that we've been trying to look into. And I hear the music, so I guess we'll have to wait till tomorrow.
But you can summarize it in a sentence or two.
Well, the Department of Corrections has said that people who are being deported are actually being set free in their native countries, and they're not serving out their terms.
Amazing. Amazing. So much for the worst of the worst. John Parker, KTNF, host of The Gailey Show. Thank you, John.
Thank you, Tom.
Great talking with you. We'll be back with Lisa Graves right after this. Stick around. It's going to get fascinating.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann.
It's the Thom Hartmann University Book Club. Today we're reading from The Undercommons, Fugitive Planning and Black Study by Stefano Harney and Fred Moten. This is from the introduction. It starts with love, exchange, fellowship. It ends as it begins, in motion, in between various modes of being and belonging, and on the way to new economies of giving, taking, being with and for. And it ends with a ride in a Buick Skylark on a way to another place altogether. Surprising, perhaps, after we have engaged dispossession, debt, dislocation, and violence, but not surprising when you have understood that the projects of fugitive planning and black study are mostly about reaching out to find connection. They're about making common cause with the brokenness of being, a brokenness, I would venture to say, that is also blackness, that remains blackness, and will, despite all, remain broken, because this book is not a prescription for repair. If we do not seek to fix what has been broken, then what? How do we resolve to live with brokenness, with being broke, which is also what Moten and Harney called debt? Well, given that debt is sometimes a history of giving, at other times a history of taking, at all times a history of capitalism, and given that debt also signifies a promise of ownership but never delivers on that promise, we have to understand that debt is something that cannot be paid off. Debt, as Harney puts it, presumes a kind of individualized realization to a naturalized economy that is predicated upon exploitation. Can we have, he asks, another sense of what is owed that does not presume a nexus of activities like recognition and acknowledgement, payment and gratitude? Can debt become a principle of elaboration? Moten thinks Moten links economic debt to the brokenness of being in the interview with Stefan Shukatis, who he acknowledges that some debts should be paid and that much is owed, especially to black people, by white people. And yet he says, I also know that it is, that what it is that is supposed to be repaired is irreparable. It can't be repaired. The only thing we can do is tear this stuff down completely and build something new, end of quote. The Undercommons do not come to pay their debts, to repair what has been broken, to fix what has been undone. If you want to know what the Undercommons wants, what Moten and Harney want, what black people, indigenous people, queers, and poor people want, what we, the we who cohabit in the space of the Undercommons, want, it is this. We cannot be satisfied with the recognition and acknowledgement generated by the very system that denies A, that anything was ever broken, and B, that we deserve to be the broken part. So we refuse to ask for recognition, and instead we want to take apart, dismantle, tear down that structure right now. That right now limits our ability to find each other, to see beyond it, and to access the places that we know live outside its walls. We cannot say what new structures will replace the ones we live with yet, because once we have torn stuff down, we will inevitably see more and see differently and feel a new sense of wanting and being and becoming. What we want after the break will be different from what we think we want before the break, and both are necessarily different from the desires that issue from being in the dark. Let's come at this by another path. In the melancholic and visionary 2009 film version of Maurice Sendak's Where the Wild Things Are, 1963, Max, the small seeker who leaves his room, his home, his family to find the world beyond, finds a world of lost and lonely beasts, and they promptly make him their king. Max is the first king the wild things have had, whom they did not eat, and who did not, in turn, try to eat them. And the beasts are the first grown things that Max has met, who want his opinion, his judgment, and his rule. Max's power is that he is small while they are big. He promises the beasts that he has no plans to eat them, and that this is more than anyone has ever promised them. He promises them that he will find ways through and around, and will slip through the cracks and re-crack the cracks if they fill up. He promises to keep sadness at bay and to make the world with the wild creatures that roared their terrible roars and gnashed their terrible teeth and rolled their terrible eyes and showed their terrible claws. That Max fails to make the wild things happy or to save them or to make the world with them is less important than the fact that he found them and he recognized in them the end of something and potentially the path to an alternative in his world, or an alternative to his world, excuse me. The wild things were not the utopian creatures of fairy tales. They were the rejected and lost subjects of the world Max had left behind. And because he shuttles between the Oedipal land where his mother rules and the ruined world of the wild, he knows the parameters of the real. He sees what is included and what is left out. And he is now able to set sail for another place, a place that is neither the home he left nor the home to which he wants to return. Moten and Harney want to gesture to another place, a wild place that is not simply the leftover space that limbs real and regulated zones of polite society. Rather, it is a wild place that continuously produces its own unregulated wilderness. The zone we enter through Moten and Harney is ongoing and exists in the present, and as Harney puts it, some kind of demand is already being enacted, fulfilled in the call itself. While describing the riots of London in 2011, Harney suggests that the riots and insurrections do not from the Undercommons, Fugitive Planning and Black Study by Stefano Harney and Fred Moten. This is from the introduction. It starts with love, exchange, fellowship. It ends as it begins, in motion, in between various modes of being and belonging, and on the way to new economies of giving, taking, being with and for. And it ends with a ride in a Buick Skylark on a way to another place altogether. Surprising, perhaps, after we have engaged dispossession, debt, dislocation, and violence, but not surprising when you have understood that the projects of Fugitive Planning and Black Study are mostly about reaching out to find connection. They are about making common cause with the brokenness of being, a brokenness, I would venture to say, that is also blackness, that remains blackness, and will, despite all, remain broken, because this book is not a prescription for repair. If we do not seek to fix what has been broken, then what? How do we resolve to live with brokenness, with being broke, which is also what Moten and Harney called debt? Well, given that debt is sometimes a history of giving, at other times a history of taking, at all times a history of capitalism, and given that debt also signifies a promise of ownership but never delivers on that promise, we have to understand that debt is something that cannot be paid off. Debt, as Harney puts it, presumes a kind of individualized realization to a naturalized economy that is predicated upon exploitation. Can we have, he asks, another sense of sign up for right now? It's called Grave Injustice. The website is graveinjustice.news, N-E-W-S. She's also a contributor to Legal AF and Midas Touch and co-host to the 5, 8.5, leader of True North Research, co-founder of Court Accountability. Lisa's been all over pretty much all this stuff for years, and it's so nice having you back on the program, Lisa. Yeah, I love your new Substack newsletter. I'm not sure how new it is, but your Substack newsletter. And I was fascinated by your article about how John Roberts brought us this debacle that we're experiencing right now. You want to explain it?
Yes. Well, Tom, it's just lovely to be back on with you. I'm such a fan of your work, your writings, your speeches, your show. And thank you for asking me to talk about it. I do have, it's a relatively new Substack called Grave Injustice, and it goes along with my new book, Without Precedent, which is about John Roberts. And yeah, my analysis, and I think that nearly every decision the court has made since that immunity decision, is that John Roberts really put us in this spot by giving Donald Trump unprecedented immunity from criminal prosecution for so-called official acts. And that's the first part of the big illegitimacy, at least the most illegitimate decision in modern history. Of course, John Roberts was, doing his, moving his agenda forward from the court, undermining the Voting Rights Act back in the case of Shelby County in 2012 and in Citizens United and other decisions. But really, that immunity decision is what paved Donald Trump's way to come back into power by basically pardoning him retrospectively and, in essence, prospectively. And then John Roberts and his fellow Republican appointees have gone out of their way over the past 12 months to clear away temporary restraining orders by lower court judges who found that Donald Trump's himself or his policies had violated the Constitution or statutes or more, and issued temporary restraining orders while the cases could be litigated. But John Roberts and his fellow Republican appointees allowed many of those very destructive actions to go forward and put us in the really serious declining democracy that we're in because of this Supreme Court's giving Donald Trump immunity and also impunity.
You know, in my book on the Supreme Court, when I was researching it, I found a document when John Roberts was working for Ronald Reagan, when he was in the Reagan Justice Department. I found a document where it was like a 24-page thing, where he basically was laying out how the Justice Department, the Reagan Justice Department, could basically blow up the Supreme Court. That they could use Article 3, Section 2 of the Constitution and try to pass legislation that would prohibit the Supreme Court from ruling on abortion. This was all, the whole thing was about how to reverse Roe v. Wade. And it was really interesting. He was making basically Thomas Jefferson's argument against judicial review. And so I've been kind of following, Roberts is no dummy. But why is he just, I mean, he once had a fairly jaundiced view of the power of the Supreme Court. But why is he going along with what seems to be a neo-fascist administration?
Well, that's a great question. I think that really, in many ways, John Roberts is like Robert Bork without the goatee, without the persona. Because John Roberts really, from the outset of his legal career, has been a Reagan revolutionary. He just was not as outspoken about it publicly. He was outspoken in some of these memos that surfaced later on, like the memo you mentioned where the Reagan administration was considering ways to limit the power of the Supreme Court. A number of his memos are filled with, sarcastic notes, criticism of women's rights and other issues. But really, he devoted the beginning of his career to attacking the Voting Rights Act. His first real job, or his first major job at the Justice Department, was to be the point person for the Reagan administration on attacking efforts to undo a Supreme Court decision that had limited the effect of Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act, which is now before the court again in the Calais case. And he threw himself wholeheartedly into that effort and basically tried to make sure that Reagan did not go along with congressional efforts to reform and overturn a Supreme Court decision in the Mobile, Alabama case. And he lost. He lost that effort. But he has been really a gunner. And in some ways, I think that one of the shocking things about John Roberts is how in his immunity ruling, the ruling that he really orchestrated, as the New York Times detailed last year, how John Roberts wasn't just exonerating Trump. In some ways, he was exonerating Nixon's ghost. And you can see that as well in this assertion of unitary executive theory, or this notion that the president can fire anyone at any time for any reason. Right. And I reread the immunity decision as part of looking back on January 6th and the anniversary, and it's actually shocking what John Roberts larded into that immunity decision. It included efforts to try to make the pardon power beyond any review by Congress or the courts. That wasn't, actually at issue in that indictment that Jack Smith brought, and that the court was considering. Instead, John Roberts took the opportunity to try to push the pardon power even beyond the few cases that have addressed the issue, to try to say that, in essence, Trump could do anything with the pardon power and no one could do anything about it, which is actually what we've seen him do in ways that I think are fundamentally corrupt. But also in that opinion, John Roberts tried to attack the notion of there being any separation really between the president and the control of the Justice Department. And I think that leads straight to what we just saw this past week in the raid on Fulton County, where you have a criminal investigation spurred by Trump at the behest of conspiracy theorists to take control of our ballots in ways that not just jeopardize the integrity of the election in Fulton County, but perhaps are a trial balloon for efforts by Trump and his regime to take hold of ballots in the 2026 election if they don't like the results.
Yeah. Now, in the election of 1876, you had 3 states that were contested. Oregon was one of them because the Klan ran Oregon. The other 2 were southern states. I think Florida was one of them. I don't recall the third. And because all 3 of those states submitted electoral votes, both for Tilden and for Hayes.
Right.
And it turned out that Sam Tilden, the Democrat, actually got more votes and more electoral college votes than Rutherford B. Hayes, but they cut this deal to stab black people in the back and end Reconstruction in exchange for making the Republican president. And what it highlighted was the power of Congress to basically choose who's going to be president, and for that matter, to seat whoever they want. Yesterday we were talking with Ro Khanna, and he was talking about how Republicans or Democrats in the House are concerned that if Mike Johnson is Speaker next year, or even going into the transition, that somehow he might be able to not seat some Democrats if there's any suggestion of fraud in their elections, and that Trump and his buddies will be out there looking for everything, and that's what Tulsi Gabbard is up to right now with this raid down in Georgia. It turns out we've now seen the rationale for the arrest warrant, and there's literally no basis for the search warrant. Rather, there's really no basis for that search warrant. You wrote a piece over at graveinjustice.news titled "John Roberts has positioned the court to help Republicans rig the midterms and keep Trump in control, of Congress." Give me the details on this.
Yeah, well, first let me just say I really appreciate your raising that Hayes-Tilden betrayal, because it was an extraordinary moment in American history, and it was the end, really, of the reconstruction of the effort to redress the legacy of slavery in America and push America into that racial apartheid that is known as Jim Crow. And in some ways, what we're seeing with the Supreme Court, with the Roberts Court, is an effort to roll back the law, particularly the voting rights law, to way before the Voting Rights Act passed in 1965, to go back to that era, because what's happening right now is the Roberts Court is considering a case coming out of Louisiana. It's called the Calais case. And in that case, there was litigation after the 2020 census, where the Louisiana legislature, the white-dominated legislature, decided to create 5 white majority districts and 1 black majority district, even though Louisiana, its population is about 1/3 African Americans, black voters. And so that was litigated. Louisiana lost. The lower courts ordered the maps to be redrawn. They redrew them to ensure that there were 2 black majority districts. This is a part of a longstanding set of legal precedents from the Supreme Court derived from Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act in order to prevent the black vote from being diluted, diluted. Diluted. And so, what the white legislature was trying to do was to dilute the black vote, to use their power in order to ensure a white majority of representation. They would have a white majority, but like a white supermajority of representation. And so then that was litigated by some white activists in Louisiana, and that's the case before the court. And if this court rules, as everyone expects it to rule, the Roberts Court to rule against Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act, that ruling would allow these white legislatures in the South that have been covered by Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act to bleach out their congressional delegations, to basically redo their map.
It's called packing and cracking, isn't it?
Yes, it's called packing and cracking, and it would basically pack black voters into districts where they would have minimal representation, and to maximize white representation, in particular white Republican representation. And that ruling, if they assert, which I think Roberts is likely to assert, he may well have Clarence Thomas ask him to write this opinion as the black Republican, in essence, appointed to the court, to say that it is unconstitutional to have a black majority district, to have a minority majority district in a legislature. And doing so would dramatically change what Congress looks like. But the other part of that, which is one of the reasons why I wrote that piece, is that in essence, the Roberts Court would be handing Mike Johnson and Donald Trump a sort of loaded weapon to assert that if it's unconstitutional to have a black majority district, to ensure that you have minority representation in a congressional delegation, they could very well use that as pretext to not seat any member elected from a majority-minority district.
Oh, that's amazing. That's amazing. The great Lisa Graves. The book is without precedent on John Roberts, but check out her website, graveinjustice.news. Lisa, always great talking with you. I always learn something. Thank you so much for dropping by.
Oh, likewise. Thank you so much, Tom.
My pleasure. We'll be back 18 minutes past the hour.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
ICE doesn't need their masks. I'll tell you about that right after the break. Stay with us. And welcome back, Larry in Los Angeles. Hey, Larry, what's on your mind today?
Well, it's apparently Jobs Wednesday. I was wrong about Friday.
Yeah, the numbers are supposed to come out today. Have they already come out?
Yeah, they did. And Donald Trump supposedly had his best month since he became president again.
Oh, well, his new person running that Bureau of Labor Statistics she'll keep her job for another day, right?
Well, I tell you one thing, I no longer trust the numbers coming out of the government regarding jobs anymore.
Yeah.
They revised Joe Biden's last month. It was a partial month. He was only there for 20 days in January of 2005. They revised it so that it would show a net loss, meaning that was the only month that Biden was president where he saw job loss.
Wow. So it looks like they're actually making up numbers now for political purposes.
It looks like they're making up numbers.
I mean, Challenger Day, Challenger Christmas Day or whatever it is, you know, that company that does payrolls, they reported that there were like, what, 160,000 job losses or layoffs last month or last quarter?
ADP?
Yeah. Well, no,
I didn't check their numbers.
Yeah.
I kind of stopped looking at their numbers because they're kind of weird.
Yeah, but this was Challenger Christmas. But whatever, you know, it was widely reported on Monday, I think, or maybe it was Friday of last week. But yeah, it sure looks to me like we're in a recession, Larry. I mean, I am just looking around. It looks to me like recession. What say you?
It's beginning to look like one more bad month, and yes, we will be in recession. Yeah. We can't even trust January's numbers because we're going to get 2 revisions in the future. And all of Trump's revisions have been revised down. He is still below 500,000 jobs created, although some of these news reports are claiming he's seen over 500,000. Right. But that's still half of what you normally see.
So is this how is this how the scam works, Larry? Trump comes out, or his people come out and they say, "Oh, look at this! We just created 70,000 jobs," and then a month later they say, "Oh, oops, that was actually a 10,000 job loss, but now we're just doing a revision." So the revisions never get publicized.
Well, the revisions are in the jobs report, but yeah, as far as the media is concerned, they're not telling you that over the 3-month period, Trump loses jobs.
Right. They're just looking at the top line number
because of 2 previous revisions.
Yeah.
So he always gets the news that actually boosts his poll numbers by showing that he's seeing jobs created.
Yeah.
But when you look at how they revised everything, like I said, he's only seen about, I think it's somewhere near 500,000 jobs created. That's half of what you normally see on a typical year for any president.
For the last 13 months?
In the last 13 months. And in the case of Donald Trump's people, they were just I think it was in September, they were claiming that Donald Trump had already seen 600,000 jobs created. It's now back down since then.
Yeah, I get it. I get it. Larry, you always bring us the goods. Thank you for the call. Great to hear from you. 22 minutes past the hour. I'll be back with more of the news of the day and your calls. Stick around. Change starts with you. You can be calling your Democratic or Republican representatives to let them know what you think by calling 202-224-3121. It's the Capitol switchboard. It'll get you right through to them.
Is it stronger than we think? We were told the vote was sacred, that the truth would never sink. But the billionaires are smiling while they're pouring out the ink. They're buying up the judges, and the headlines start to shrink. Tell me now, my friend, is the assault on democracy stronger than we think?
Welcome back, 24 minutes past the hour. Picking up your calls. Oh, actually, no, I've got a couple of quick stories for you. The ice masks are a lie. This is amazing. This is just an absolute, Garrett Graff wrote this. His website is doomsdayscenario.co. And he points out that the Cato Institute, the right-wing Republican think tank funded by billionaires, last month found that this is when Kristi Noem and administration officials are claiming a 413%, an 1,150%, an 8,000% increase in threats against ICE officers. What they found, actually what Cato Institute found when they looked into it, was that it was actually the second safest year for ICE patrols and Border Patrol agents since the agency was created in the 1920s. In fact, Cato calculated the chance of an ICE or Border Patrol agent being murdered in the line of duty is about 1 in 94,000 per year, which is 5 times less likely than a civilian being murdered. 2 special agents for Homeland Security have been killed since 2003. No deportation officer has ever been murdered since the creation of ICE after 9/11. You have to go back all the way to 1949 to find the only on-duty homicide of a deportation agent. Being an elementary school student in the United States is more deadly than being an ICE officer. The leading cause of death of ICE officers, by the way, is not, hits or guns or bad guys, it's COVID. This is Aaron Richland Melnick writes, the last time there was even a non-COVID death on duty was in 2016. And yet in city after city, ICE officers and CBP agents are charging into America's cities dressed like they're assaulting Fallujah. I mean, retail workers across America last year had 94 workplace homicides. People who work in retail at minimum wage, 94 homicides, none for ICE. It's more dangerous to work at Target than to be an ICE officer. But these snowflakes, we've got to have masks on our faces. We got to conceal our identity. You know that the reason they're doing that is so that they can feel impunity, so they feel immunity, so that they can beat the crap out of people and never be held to account for it. This is incredible. At no point in time has an officer been seen, has been harmed by, anyhow, ICE and CBP have just basically lost their moral legitimacy in this country, in my opinion. And I suspect yours too. We'll be right back.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
I have a follow-up story on that, and also a geeky science, or kind of a sad story about Bob Kennedy. Stick around. We'll be right back with that. And your calls, of course. Our book today in the Thom Hartmann Book Club is Defying Hitler by Sebastian Haffner, a memoir. This is from chapter 17, about a little more than a third of the way into the book. At first, the revolution only gave the impression of being an historical event like any other, a matter for the press that might just possibly have some effect on the public mood. The Nazis celebrate January 30th as their day of revolution. They are wrong. There was no revolution on January 30th, 1933, just a change of government. Hitler became chancellor, by no means the Führer of the Nazi regime. The cabinet contained only 2 Nazis apart from him. He swore an oath of allegiance to the Weimar Constitution. The general opinion was that it was not the Nazis who had won, but the bourgeois parties of the right, who had captured, in quotes, the Nazis and held all the key positions in the government. In constitutional terms, events had taken a much more conventional, unrevolutionary course than most of what had happened during the previous 6 months. Outwardly also, the day had no revolutionary aspects, unless one considers a Nazi torchlight procession through Wilhelmstrasse or a minor gunfight in the suburbs that night as signs of a revolution. For most of us outsiders, the experience of January 30th, 1933 was that of reading the papers and the emotions we felt while we were doing so. The morning headline was, "Hitler called to president." That produced a certain nervous, impotent irritation. Hitler had been called to the president in August and November. He had been offered the vice-chancellorship and then the chancellorship. Both times he had set impossible conditions, and both times there had been solemn declarations, "Never again." Each time, "never again" had lasted exactly 3 months. Hitler's opponents in Germany at that time suffered from a compulsive urge to offer him everything he wanted, indefatigably, and at an even cheaper price, indeed to press it upon him. It's the same now with his opponents outside Germany. Again and again, this appeasement was formally renounced, and again it gaily reappeared at the crucial moment. Just so today. Then, as now, one's only hope was Hitler's own unreasonableness. Would it not sooner or later exhaust the patience of his opponents? Then, as now, it became apparent that their patience knew no bounds. At midday, the headline said, "Hitler makes impossible demands." We nodded, half reassured. It was only too credible. It would have gone against his nature to ask for less than too much. Perhaps the cup had once more passed from us. Hitler, the last defense against Hitler. At about 5 o'clock, the evening papers arrived. Cabinet of National Unity formed Hitler Reichschancellor. I don't know what the general reaction was. For about a minute, mine was completely correct. Icy horror. Certainly this had been a possibility for a long time. You had to reckon with it. Nevertheless, it was so bizarre, so incredible to read it now in black and white. Hitler, Reichschancellor. For a moment, I physically sensed the man's odor of blood and filth, the nauseating approach of a man-eating animal, its foul, sharp claws in my face. Then I shook the sensation off, tried to smile, started to consider, and found many reasons for reassurance. That evening, I discussed the prospects of the new government with my father. We agreed it had a good chance of doing a lot of damage, but not much chance of surviving very long. A deeply reactionary government with Hitler as its mouthpiece. Apart from this, it did not really differ much from the two governments that had succeeded Bruning's. Even with the Nazis, it would not have a majority in the Reichstag. Of course, that could always be dissolved, but the government had a clear majority of the population against it, in particular the working class, which would probably go communist now that the Social Democrats had completely discredited themselves. One could prohibit the communists, but that would only make them more dangerous. In the meantime, the government would be likely to implement reactionary social and cultural measures with some anti-Semitic additions to please Hitler. That would not attract any of its opponents to its side. Foreign policy would probably be a matter of banging the table. There might be an attempt to rearm. That would automatically add the outside world to the 60% of the home population who were against the Hitler government. Besides, who were the people who had suddenly started voting Nazi in the last 3 years? Misguided ignoramuses, for the most part, victims of propaganda, a fluctuating mass that would fall apart at the first disappointment. No, all things considered, this government was not a cause for alarm. The only question was what would come after it. It was possible that they would drive the country to civil war. The communists were capable of going on the attack before a prohibition against them came into force. The next day, this turned out to be the general opinion of the intelligent press. It is curious how plausible an argument it is, even today, when we know what came next. How could things turn out so completely different? Perhaps it was just because we were all so certain that they could not do so, and relied on that with far too much confidence. So we neglected to consider that it might, if worse came to worse, be necessary to prevent the disaster from happening. Through the whole of February 1933, everything that happened remained a matter for the press. In other words, it took place in an arena that would lose all reality for 99% of the population the moment there were no newspapers. Admittedly, enough occurred in that arena. The Reichstag was dissolved. Then in a flagrant breach of the Constitution, Hindenburg also dissolved the Prussian regional parliament. There were fast and furious changes of personnel in the civil service. The book defined Hitler. Share the Thom Hartmann program with your friends. Our podcast, The Hartmann Report, is absolutely free and available wherever fine podcasts are available. And the entire 3-hour podcast is available over at thomhartmann.com. You know, we've all gotten so used to living in a country where people are trying to crowdfund, like, cancer research for children. St. Jude's is a wonderful charity, but we're the only developed country in the world that needs, you know, where you have to go to people and beg for money in order to treat children with cancer. Or Shriners, I mean, another great charity, but shouldn't we all be funding children who are born with birth defects and problems like that? We're probably the only country in the world where you can sell your life insurance policy because Social Security doesn't cover your retirement. I mean, it's probably not happening anywhere else in the world. Or reverse mortgage your home because you can't afford it. I mean, this is crazy that we are living in a country where No Kid Hungry, a charity. You can read all about it. There's a whole op-ed I wrote about this over at HartmannReport.com. It's titled America's Sickest Reality Show, Crowdfunding Cancer Care While Billionaires Hoard Billions. Check it out. Welcome back. 35 minutes past the hour. So just following up on the ICE story. Donna Hughes Brown is a lawful permanent resident of the United States, has been since she was a child. And she and her husband flew to Europe because they're a relative of theirs, this was in Dublin, a relative had died, and so they went over to Europe for the funeral. And when she came back, when they landed at O'Hare Airport, they were told that everybody, as they got off the plane, had to show their passports, and sure enough, there were guys with guns waiting for her. They took her off, and it turned out that she had, now again, she's a legal permanent resident of the United States, and there was a green card holder. She had a $25 check that bounced 11 years ago. And she said she was living a paycheck to paycheck at the time. She didn't realize it was going to bounce. She paid the restitution of $80 plus the court fee of $117. She served a year on probation. Everything was good. But they arrested her, and they held her in a detention center for 143 days. And they're making it harder and harder for people to get out of these places by moving them around, denying them access to their lawyers, basically vanishing people. And this was, you know, a woman who's lived here literally since she was a child. She was in a filthy holding cell somewhere in Kentucky where insects crawled out of the drain and feces streaked the walls. The Missouri grandmother's life had taken an unrecognizable turn when federal agents pulled her off a flight arriving at Chicago's International Airport. A grandmother. Meanwhile, over at Bob Kennedy's world, the FDA, Moderna, has spent millions of dollars developing a new flu vaccine. Now, mRNA vaccines, what they do is they cause the body to produce the protein that is associated with the virus, so that, you know, it looks like it's a piece of virus to the body's immune system. Cause your own body to produce a little bit of this, and thus, you know, you have an immune reaction to it, as opposed to growing the actual virus in an egg, and then when you get a whole bunch of them, killing the virus and then injecting that. That's the old-fashioned way, right? The new way is to create mRNA in the lab. It doesn't require any viruses, doesn't require any eggs. It's fast. It can be tweaked and fine-tuned as new flus come along. I mean, there's a whole lot of advantages to this. Plus, it's more effective. The mRNA vaccines are more effective than the killed virus or even the live virus vaccines. But Bob Kennedy doesn't like them. So Moderna spent millions of dollars developing this new flu vaccine that could deal with a bird flu pandemic, could deal with this new type A flu that's out right now that's just whacking people so badly. They said, we've got the solution, here it is. And this is just amazing. This is from The Guardian. U.S. regulators will not review Moderna's request to license a new, more effective flu shot, even though the U.S. Food and Drug Administration previously gave the green light. It's the latest move by the Trump administration against vaccines. Incredible, huh? Just incredible. The new vaccine, they write, elicited better antibody responses than the existing vaccines did and had no safety concerns, according to the researchers. But Bob doesn't like mRNA. Or the people who work with Bob, I guess. All right, what's on your mind today? Steve in Houston. Hey, Steve, what's up?
Yes, Tom. Good to talk to you.
Thank you. What's on your mind?
I'm wondering, did you actually say that non-citizens should be able to vote in the United States?
I've never said that. I would never say that, Steve.
Okay, I thought I might.
Now, let me throw. There is a small caveat. There are a couple of cities where they allow non-citizens to vote on local issues if they are property holders. So you're voting on your own property taxes going up and that kind of stuff. I don't agree with that, but there are some cities in the United States where non-citizens can vote on local issues. But, like I said, I think only citizens should be allowed to vote.
Well, one quick other question, please.
And by the way, there's not a single Democrat that I know of out there that would disagree with me on that.
And one other question. What is the difference between Obama deporting people during his administration, illegal immigrants, and today? What's the pushback from? The difference, as I pointed out earlier, is that when Obama deported people, he didn't beat them up, he didn't smash the windows of their cars, he didn't drag them out into the snow by their hair and drag them down the street, he didn't beat the crap out of them, he didn't shoot them 10 times in the back, he didn't shoot them 4 times in the face, he didn't send masked thugs in. Up until Trump became president, ICE wore the same kind of windbreakers the FBI does, only instead of FBI on them, they say ICE. They had badges. They did not conceal their identity. They were polite. I told the story of a dear friend of our family's who married a guy who was an illegal immigrant, an undocumented person. ICE tracked them down. This was during the Obama administration. Tracked them down in this little town in northern Michigan. He owned a Mexican restaurant and said, you got to leave. He gave him 3 weeks to leave the country. He left the country along with his wife, who's our friend, and now their 4 children. They had 1 at the time. And they've been living in Mexico ever since. Obama deported them. But he didn't do it. In fact, Obama, in each one of his years, has deported more people out of the United States than Trump has done in any of his 6 years. But Obama did it with courtesy and professionalism, and Trump is intentionally doing it with violence and disrespect. That's the difference. But isn't there more violence toward the ICE agents now than back in the Obama era?
Not a single case that I know of. Perhaps you weren't listening like 15 minutes ago, but let me just share this with you very quickly. This is from the Cato Institute, the Republican think tank, right, that's funded by Charles and David Koch. David's passed away. But this is a study that the Cato Institute published just a couple months ago that says that last year, 2025, was the second safest year ever for ICE officers and Border Patrol agents. Cato, this is a quote from their report, quote, the chance of an ICE or Border Patrol agent being murdered in the line of duty is 1 in 94,549 per year, 5.5 times less likely than an American civilian being murdered. They go on to say the last time there was a non-COVID death among ICE officers was 2016. They go on to say that being an elementary, this is a quote, being an elementary school student in the United States is far deadlier than being an ICE officer. There were 94 workplace homicides in the United States last year among retail workers, people working at Walmart and Target. 94 of them were killed in the workplace. No ICE officers or Customs and Border Patrol officers were killed in the workplace. And this is from the New York Times. A review of DHS and ICE press releases since January 2025 indicates this theoretical scenario, of ICE being attacked, has never actually occurred. At no point in time has any officer been seen conducting his work, identified, and subsequently attacked. In other words, this whole thing of, we've got to wear the masks or they'll dox us and they'll come after us. It literally has never happened.
Well, didn't the protests come before the two people were shot by ICE agents. Weren't there a lot of protests and pushback even before that?
The protests started when these guys came in dressed like they were attacking Fallujah rather than like the old FBI and ICE guys from 3 years ago, when they came in dressed like they were attacking Fallujah and concealing their identity, Steve.
Okay.
And I don't, if you're a Republican, your party has spent the better part of my lifetime warning us about what happens when the government sends in jackbooted thugs. And I don't know why Republicans are not upset about the jackbooted thugs. What am I missing?
Well, thank you for your, for talking to you.
Sure. Anytime, Steve. You're always welcome to call. 45 minutes past the hour. We'll be in a couple seconds. I'll be right back with more of your calls in just a minute. Stay tuned. It's the Thom Hartmann Program, your media support group for We the People. Stick around.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit ThomHartmann.com for audio and video archives.
Helping you win the water cooler wars. I'll be right back. And welcome back. Gregory in Ventura, California. Hey, Gregory, what's on your mind today?
Hey, Tom. Hi. Hey. Well, what's on my mind is, this raid on the election where all the ballots were in Georgia.
In Georgia, yeah.
As I recall, part of the... Can you hear me okay?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just fine.
Okay. There we go. That's better. Anyway, as I recall, the right of self-governance is part of our foundation and a cornerstone of our democracy, basically of the people, by the people, for the people, which includes the secret ballot.
Right.
And when they go in and seize the ballot boxes, and they've got them, they'll be able to go through every ballot and see how people voted. So we lose that. That's my point. We've lost that secret ballot.
Well, it gives them a lot of information that they can use to selectively purge people. And to your original point, Gregory, I would point out the guarantee clause in the U.S. Constitution, which says that the federal government shall guarantee a Republican form of government to each state. In other words, each state operates with a certain level of Republican autonomy, small r Republican, and operates as a republic. And this administration is not respecting that, in my opinion.
Right. I understand that. So, but a lot of states, I believe, have still included the right to a secret ballot, I believe.
All of them.
They haven't violated that, isn't that part of self-governance? A secret ballot is like imperative.
Well, arguably. I mean, the secret ballot is not defined in the Constitution, and there have been times in the United States, in the early republic, in the first 50 years of the United States, there were municipalities, I'm not sure if there were entire states, but there were large places. This tradition still goes on in New England. When Louise and I lived in New Hampshire and Vermont, we spent almost 15 years in those two states. You go to a town meeting and you vote by raising your hand. So not everything is secret ballot, and not everything always was. And secret ballot is not identified in the Constitution. But to the larger point, if the Republicans are looking for a list of active Democratic voters, and they can pull all those ballots and identify which ballots came from which voters, then they could come up with a hell of a list to purge.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's my fear. I mean, I recall, years and years ago when you voted, they had the booths and you shuttered in, with the walls, and people are watching, and no one can see how you vote.
Yeah.
And then you put it into an envelope, and then
to a large extent, it's still that way in most places in the United States. And it's still that way even in the New England towns, with things like presidential elections and stuff. They only vote by raising their hand for things like, the city council.
I see, for more local municipality type stuff. Okay.
Right. Or passing ordinances that require the public's approval.
So you're saying the secret ballot isn't really crystallized in the self-governance part of the people by the
no,
people.
It is not. The secret ballot is not mentioned in the Declaration. It's not mentioned in the Constitution. It's not mentioned in the Federalist Papers. I don't recall a mention of it in James Madison's notes on the Constitutional Convention, although it's been 20 years since I read them. But you know, like I said, it was not really. It didn't really become a thing until probably the 1830s, 1840s, you know, around that time. So,
yeah.
Yep. Gregory, thanks a lot for the call. Nice to hear from you.
Thank you.
We'll be right back. It's 49 and a half minutes past the hour. Stick around, and I'll be right back with more of your calls. 3 hours a day, 5 days a week, right here. We'll be right back. Hey, thanks so much for sharing our program and for reaching out to our stations and sponsors and letting them know that you're listening. It really means a lot to us. Welcome back. 10 minutes before the hour, picking up your calls here. Tom in Celebration, Florida. Hey, Tom, what's on your mind today? Thanks for listening to Sirius XM.
Hey, Tom, how you doing?
Good. What's up?
I'm just wondering if people can't realize or see what I've seen, and you've probably been seeing, since in your lifetime, in my lifetime. I'll be 60 in August, and then I've deducted this down as to the legal takeover or coup of the country with the help of the Republican Party, using religion and politics to gain control.
Yeah, this was the unholy alliance. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No. I think you're that the separation of church and state has been abandoned by the Republican Party really forever, and they became official in 1980 with Reagan.
That's right.
And ever since then, it's been they've had a map to change laws and things to fit their needs.
No, you're absolutely right, Tom. The Reagan campaign has a lot to answer for. Not only did they cut a deal with the Iranians to hold the hostages to screw Jimmy Carter, which is treason in my mind, and makes the entire Reagan presidency illegitimate in my mind. Not only did they do that, but
and the entire party. I mean, we've seen it. The entire party will cover, their guy.
I get that, but not only did they cut this deal with Iran, but Reagan brought George W. Bush, his running mate's son, into the campaign to be a liaison to the religious right, because Reagan was pro-abortion. He signed the most liberal abortion law in the country when he was governor of California. And George Herbert Walker Bush, his vice president, his running mate, was also pro-abortion, and in fact was a big fan and financial supporter of Planned Parenthood. So when they brought in his son to hook them up with the religious right, and by the way, at that time in 1979, the Southern Baptist Convention was in favor of abortion rights for women. So in 1980, when George W. brought, created a marriage essentially between the Reagan campaign and Jerry Falwell and Ralph Reed and all these right-wing crackpots, these evangelical crackpots, one of their stipulations was, we're going to do what the Catholics are doing. We're going to go anti-abortion because we think that that'll catch some good vibes for us or whatever. And that was when the Republican Party began to embrace religion in a big way. And then it was the Reagan administration that stopped enforcing what's called the Johnson Amendment, which was passed in 1956 through the Senate. It was proposed by Lyndon Johnson when he was the Senate Majority Leader. And the Johnson Amendment says that if you are a nonprofit, 501c3, like a church, and you engage in electioneering, in other words, you advocate for a particular candidate or party from the pulpit, you lose your tax-exempt status and you have to start paying taxes, property taxes, income taxes, everything else. That used to be enforced. Reagan stopped the enforcement of that, and frankly, it has not been enforced since the Reagan administration, which in my mind is a crime. So, Tom, great point. Thank you. Ed in Chicago. Hey, Ed, what's up?
Hey, Tom, I'm serious about this. I've been calling my reps. Next time they have any kind of congressional hearings with anybody from the Trump administration, I would hope that the Democrats would just not ask any questions at all to the witnesses and just use their time to run down a list of everything that they are doing that is either illegal or is harming the country. I think this might come up in the next Robert Kennedy hearings with the vaccines, because these people, especially like Robert Kennedy and Bondi, they literally have no shame. They enjoy the game. To them, it's just a game, and they enjoy it.
And they don't care what kind of damage is done to the country as a result of it.
Right, and I'm serious. Just literally don't ask them any questions. This is for the Democrats. Just use up your entire time to list fact after fact of what they are doing that is either illegal or is harming the country. And
I
don't
was
give them any
expecting,
time.
you know, the big one I was expecting this morning, one of the Democrats was asking Pam Bondi, and he said, you know, you're a professional law enforcement officer. She says, yeah, I'm a prosecutor. I prosecuted murderers, blah, blah, blah. And he says, you've been doing this for like, yes, I was AG for 8 years in Florida, and I was, you know, a prosecutor for 18 years. And I was waiting for him to say, then why, during the 8 years you were Attorney General of Florida, did you not even once investigate Jeffrey Epstein, even though he was committing these crimes right underneath your nose? And I know that she was expecting that question because I was watching the thing and you could see this look on her face like, oh my God, here it comes, here it comes. Right. And he never asked the question.
Yeah, well, again, I mean, that goes to my point. The Democrats, I mean, there are some that are really good at it, but getting around it. But for the most part, again, I would just say, literally, stop playing their game.
Yeah.
Just ask, just like I said, just list fact after fact after fact. Make sure your facts are all, you know, correct. And don't give them any time for, you know, the filibuster or give Fox News talking points. And
right. And it's not just that. I mean, she's got what's called a burn book with her, what they call a burn book. And it's got all these things that you can, nasty things that you can say about the Democratic members who are there. And she's like, it's so funny to watch her when the next person comes in, you know, she's sorting through it, looking for, okay, where's Zoe Lofgren? Oh, there she is. Now, what do they say about her? I mean, it's like, you know, her brain is in that book. It's really pretty pathetic.
It's their game. And like I said, for the Democrats, stop playing their game. Yeah. Play your own game.
Yeah.
And I know I'm just, who knows if the Democrats will do this.
The problem, Ed, is that if they can elicit a response from her, even an outraged response, that's much more likely to go viral, to be picked up by the media, than one of the members of Congress simply giving a speech, basically.
Yeah, I guess you got a point there.
You know, so there's a delicate, and that's why they're throwing her a question, and then when she tries to filibuster, cutting her off, and that's what they didn't do last time, and they learned their lesson. So you know they're taking her seriously this time, and I think they're doing a great job. Ed, thank you very much for the call. Great to hear from you. We'll be back on the other side of the break. Trump is going after a Canadian bridge. This is corruption. This is so bizarre. Stick around.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann.
We say fight back!
Kickback, Exposing the Global Corporate Bribery Network by David Montero. This is from the introduction, Chapter 1. During Watergate, the appointment of a special prosecutor to investigate Richard Nixon's alleged tampering with elections was intended to mark the close of a sordid chapter in American history. Instead, that effort, culminating in Nixon's resignation, would prove to be only the beginning of a deeper political morass that America would face for decades to come. Congressional investigations would uncover for the first time that multinational corporations, through slush funds and bribes, were not only secretly funding political organizations at home, like Nixon's re-election campaign, but corrupting foreign officials abroad. This new perspective on the corporate abuse of power and its impact overseas would result in the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act, FPCA, groundbreaking legislation that, by prohibiting commercial bribery for the first time in history, sought to change how capitalism and political affairs were conducted all around the world. Now, more than 40 years later, we are experiencing a kind of deja vu as the special counsel investigates whether the president allegedly abused his power, again by obstructing an inquiry into a possible manipulation of our country's elections. Just as was the case in Watergate, whatever special counsel Robert Mueller uncovers will likely mark the beginning, rather than the end, of a reassessment of how power actually operates in this country. And just as in Watergate, there's the possibility that Mueller's far-reaching probe may reveal how tightly political corruption and corporate corruption are linked through bribery, just under the surface of America's political life. Nixon was the recipient of secret corporate donations, which were considered illegal because they should have been disclosed. But the payments, while unlawful, did not compromise the presidential election itself. Mueller's Russian inquiry is directed at a potentially far more serious crime, whether Donald Trump, the head of a sprawling business empire, colluded with a foreign power to deliberately sway the American electorate, committing the very crime that the FCPA had been trying to eradicate since Watergate, the offer of a foreign bribe, a kickback. That law specifically states that a corporate bribe need not involve an actual exchange of money. An offer of anything of value, such as a promise to a foreign government official, is sufficient to violate its terms. This is precisely what Mueller is trying to ascertain, whether Trump, his company, his associates, or his family, or some combination of them, offered a promise to Russian government officials, a quid pro quo, that if they helped Trump by manipulating the elections, Trump, if victorious, would ease U.S. sanctions against Russia. Doing so would allow greater U.S. investment of Russia and would benefit Russian officials and oligarchs, the Trump Business Organization, the corporate interests of the Trump family, and former members of his senior staff, including Paul Manafort, his one-time campaign chairman, and Michael Flynn, his disgraced national security advisor. If the Trump Organization or anyone connected with it did make such a promise, and depending on how that promise was conveyed to Russian officials, the Justice Department would have strong grounds for pursuing an FCPA charge, among others. An FCPA violation is within Mueller's mandate to investigate, quote, any matters that arose or may arise directly from this investigation. As has been widely observed, Mueller has hired 2 former federal law enforcement officials with extensive experience in investigating fraud, money laundering, and overseas bribery. Andrew Weissman, who ran the Justice Department's fraud section, which enforces the FCPA, and Greg Andres, who helped oversee FCPA policy in the criminal division. The drama playing out in Washington starkly highlights the fact that foreign corporate bribery can be a deeply misleading term. We have come to regard it, when we think of it at all, as something that unscrupulous companies do in distant countries, so that any impact it has must be contained overseas. If a corporation pays kickbacks to a greedy government official abroad, why should we be concerned? But in a highly interconnected world, bound together by a global market, a global financial system, and the constant migration of peoples, goods, capital, corruption rarely stays out there. Bribes eventually harm Americans, American society, American values, and American interests, both domestically and around the world, in ways that are difficult to gauge. Why do firms resort to bribery? The obvious reason is to gain an advantage over their competitors. But illicit payments also buy the illusion of growth in the short term, of increased market share and inflated firm value. It does not take into account the harm that this practice causes to companies themselves, sinking employee morale, diminished profit margins, and the possibility of hundreds of millions of dollars in fines and penalties, not to mention a reputation that will be associated with corruption and deceit. They also effectively steal the public's money because the majority of bribery cases involve capital-intensive development and infrastructure projects such as roads, dams, defense systems, oil extraction, or mining that are publicly funded. To recoup the bribes involved in winning such contracts, companies conspire with foreign officials to inflate the costs, sometimes by 10 or even hundreds of millions of dollars. While the companies and the officials win out, taxpayers are left shouldering the burden. Corporate bribes involve a remarkable amount of money. The World Bank has estimated $1 trillion a year, although this may represent the high end. Others have placed the market at 10% of the $4 trillion spent annually on global public procurement. The book Kickback by David Montero.
We say fight back!
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Welcome to the third hour of our program. You know, I grew up in Michigan, in mostly Lansing. Lived in Detroit for a little while, lived in Ann Arbor for a little while, but, you know, mostly I grew up in Lansing. And we used to, you know, take vacations. You know, my dad had a good union job, so every year he got 2 weeks off. And on a couple of occasions, we would drive across the bridge out of Detroit into Windsor, Canada, and then drive over to Niagara Falls. Well, it's a kind of a shortcut to Niagara Falls. And the Canadian side of the falls is beautiful, just like the U.S. side. And I didn't know at the time that bridge was owned by a billionaire. It was the Ambassador Bridge, it's called. I've been over it a bunch of times as a little kid. I've been talking back in the 50s, you know, the 60s. And it is Matthew Moran, or Moron, I'm not sure how it's pronounced, M-O-R-O-U-N, Moran. He's a trucking magnate. He's a trucking billionaire, and his family owns or controls this privately owned bridge. And Canada was like, you know, we need more traffic with the United States. Now, of course, they made this decision a couple of years ago, back when, you know, Joe Biden was president and the United States was a rational partner. Canada is now moving away from us as fast as they can, and the need for cross-national traffic, you know, U.S. to, you know, Windsor to Detroit traffic, Canada to U.S. traffic is probably substantially less than it was a couple of years ago because we're essentially being boycotted. But anyhow, the Canadians looked at this and said, you know, this bridge is old, it's small, you know, we need a better bridge. And so they appropriated about $6 billion of their own tax dollars. The Canadian people put up $6 billion and they built a bridge without a penny from the United States. They built a bridge from Windsor all the way over to Detroit. And then on the U.S. side, we hooked a road up to it. I mean, it went right to a road. So last week, Howard Lutnick, the billionaire who is Donald Trump's commerce secretary and who had lunch with Jeffrey Epstein on his island with his children in tow and his children's nannies, who apparently Jeffrey Epstein was very interested in. Howard Lutnick had lunch with Mr. Moron, Matthew Moron, and the guy who owns the bridge. And then what happens? Right after that, billionaire Moron talks with billionaire Lutnick, and then billionaire Lutnick talks to billionaire Trump, and then billionaire Trump goes on his Nazi-infested social media site and says, that's it. We are opposed to this bridge. He's like, half of this bridge should be property of the United States. Canada paid for it, right? I mean, what's the big deal here? Well, the big deal appears to be that this new bridge from Canada is going to cut into the profits of a billionaire who's a friend of Lutnick's and presumably a big donor to Trump. A writer at The Bulwark, Will Salatan, writes, in any other administration, this would be a huge story. In this administration, it can barely get oxygen because it's buried under a daily torrent of destruction, criminality, and abuse of power. Yeah, you think? But, I mean, this is just like, this is so on point. Ron Filipowski writes, he's the Midas Touch editor-in-chief, he writes, the Trump administration is a lawless mafia gangster extortion racket existing to enrich oligarchs at our expense and the most blatantly corrupt gangster government in American history. Yeah, you think? He wrote, now we learn that the billionaire owner of a bridge that will compete with the new Canada-Michigan bridge met with Lutnick right before Trump issued his threat to shut down the new bridge. Surprise, surprise, writes Ron Hughes on Axios. America's king of corruption strikes again. Yeah. Also, I just wanted to flag for you my new piece over at wisdomschool.com. It's titled, Why Wisdom is Almost Always Mistaken for a Threat When It First Appears. Martin Luther King Jr. was denounced as a radical. Gandhi was mocked as being impractical. Greta Thunberg is still dismissed as hysterical. Zoran Mandami was treated as dangerous. When wisdom, and these people were all wise, obviously, and when wisdom threatens the existing order, when it threatens power or it threatens profit, then wisdom is almost always framed as a problem. Now, eventually it goes around. We now quote Gandhi and King and Thunberg, for that matter, and others, Mandami, as if they were smart, as if they were wise. But it tends to start out, no. Like this person. History tells us it's easier to label the messenger a problem than to confront what they're pointing at. So I just wanted to call your attention to that. It's over at wisdomschool.org, wisdomschool.com, and it's right up at the top of the page. So what's on your mind today? Charles in Miami. Hey, Charles, what's up?
Hey, how you doing, Tom?
Good.
I'm calling because, first of all, you had a guy come on earlier, and to me, like, he attacked Democrats as like, we want illegal people or illegal aliens to come in and live in this country and break our laws and everything like that. But to me, the pushback from you should have been, well, what about these corporate, these corporations that hire illegals, like the meatpacking companies, like some of these farms, like some of these farmers, like some of these landlords that's housing these people as well. They didn't just come in, get on, walk into a business, work a couple of days and demand a paycheck. Yeah. They didn't just, walk into some of these dwellings. I don't see where, you have people saying these people are just moving in, they won't pay rent, and they just destroying the property. So,
no, you're absolutely right.
That should be a pushback.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right, Charles. I used to have one of these. I'm sorry, finish your thought. Mm-hmm. Finish your thought.
Okay, no. Okay, well, I'm switching it because to me, the main reason why I've been trying to call you for the whole week is I am so upset, and you need to tell me if I'm wrong, about Democratic leadership. It started with this 8th thing with Trump. I don't see any reason why, if you represent me in the House or in the Senate, you want to do business with this administration after the Obama thing, after the victim of AIDS. Yeah. So these people represent me and my community, okay? Yep. And if you can't even say, well, we don't want to do business until we get an apology, what's the sense in having you there? You're not representing me. You're not representing my cause.
I get it, Charles.
Okay,
and
the media is not going to be on the side of the Democrats. We know that, but yet and still, we need somebody to fight for us. And I wouldn't be surprised if Chuck Schumer was a masseuse somewhere on Jeffrey's Island or even in Trump's village. I don't point where, listen,
I don't think
it bothers me.
I don't think Chuck is that slick.
We have no pushback.
I get it. Here's the thing, Charles. I agree with you, and I'm very concerned that we have leadership that is weak. Both Schumer and Jeffries last week started putting conditions on ICE people wearing masks. They weren't like no masks at all. They were like, well, under special circumstances, you can wear a mask. What the hell? I mean, enough already. But let me go back to your first point. I used to have one of these newspapers back, 15, 20 years ago. I picked it up at one of the CPAC conventions. And they look like the shopping newspapers, you get, they come out every week in local communities where people can put help wanted ads or, furniture for sale and stuff like that. And they're in Spanish, and they were advertising meatpacking plants and construction sites all across the United States in Spanish, and they were distributed down in Mexico and Guatemala, and these guys were advertising. Prior to Reagan's reforming, and I put that in scare quotes, the immigration laws in 1986, prior to that, we used to prosecute employers. And that's why the construction industry was a great place to get a job. One of my brother Stanley, the one who passed away from smoking, actually, a few years ago, he was an electrician. He was a union electrician. And, I just watched this through Stanley's eyes. The construction industry just ceased to be a place where the unions were big because all these undocumented people came in. Same thing with the meatpacking industry. The meatpacking industry used to be a hell of a good job, good job for your life. You'd get a pension and everything else. Now it's all undocumented workers. What happened? Reagan stopped enforcing the law against employers, against wealthy white employers. And nobody ever really started enforcing that law again. And to this day, it's like, we're not going to go after the white people who hire these folks. We're going to go after the brown people who are the bottom of the totem pole. They're the bottom of the food chain, but they're the easy ones to get. And you can always hire some yahoo who wants to go out and beat brown and black people up with a stick or shoot them in the face. You can always find those people, and that's what ICE is doing right now. Charles, thanks for the call. It was a great setup. 17 minutes past the hour. We'll be right back.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Exposing the con and conservative. I'll be right back with you. And welcome back. And let's see here. Scott in Columbus, Ohio, listening on WGRN. Hey, Scott, what's on your mind today?
Hi, Tom. I heard you mention earlier the Compromise of 1877. I've been wondering about this for a long time. Mm-hmm. Tilden was a white supremacist Southern Democrat. If he would have won, he would have been maybe worse than
You're probably right, Scott. I mean, I know that you're right about him being a white supremacist. I'm not saying that the results should have been different. What I'm saying is that election set a precedent.
Gotcha. All right. That's all. I always bristle when I hear that. My great-great-grandfather was friends with Hayes. They lived in Fremont, Ohio, and he was the commander of his post for the veterans, and Hayes would come and speak to him. So I've always kind of liked him. He was a good lawyer. He represented escaped blacks when he was younger.
Yep. No, the Republicans were the good guys back then. other than the deal that they cut in 1776 to put Hayes in the White House, was they went along with the Democrats, with the racist Democrats at that time, and said, okay, cool, we'll kill, I mean, at that point, South Carolina, the state politics had basically been taken over by black people. And it just had completely freaked out everybody, all the white people in power. And so they were more than happy to get all those black people out of Congress. And you go back and you look at the racial makeup of both the state legislatures and Congress between 1865, 68, more or less, and 1880. And it's just amazing. It's like a bell curve, It's just all these black people come in, and then all these black people go back out again because they stopped, the Reconstruction process. No, I'm not a fan of Tilden.
Okay. Gotcha. Yeah, the slogan was Tilden or blood.
Yeah. Yeah, there you go.
Oh, man. Okay, Hey, great, Tom. Thanks a million. Have a great day. Awesome.
Thanks, Scott. Good talking to you.
Bye.
Deanna in Orange County, California. Hey, Deanna, what's up?
Good morning.
Hey.
Yes, I'm here to call and spread some really exciting news about a message, an event that's spreading hope through our country. And that's the Walk for Peace that 20 Buddhist monks started in October. They're on day 109, and they've walked 2,300 miles from Fort Worth, Texas, that they started in October. And today, starting at 11:30 West Coast time, they're giving their closing speech at the Lincoln Memorial with tons of thousands of people there cheering them on. Yes, and so this is so fantastic. You can see it live on YouTube and Facebook and things like that. And it's so interesting because even the monks are totally surprised by this incredible outpouring of love and support from people, and especially started soaring after one of their monks got hit by a car and lost his leg. But the message that they're sharing is very clear and simple, and that is only you yourself can make your day this peaceful day. And when you do that, it radiates out to your family, the community, the nation, and the world. And this gives a way to the way to do it is so simple as you just return to your breath, mindful breathing.
Do you think ICE is going to show up and drag any of them off?
I don't think so, because what is happening is the local sheriff, the local police, the local EMS and fire departments have been protecting them as they got down to the south. And when they exchanged, like at state boundaries or county boundaries, the sheriffs are hugging the monks.
Oh, isn't
and
that sweet?
Governors are
And
giving
handing them off.
proclamations. So it's a very hopeful thing, and I wanted to share that because people can tune in and be uplifted, because
Thank you,
we need
Deanna.
light in this darkness.
We do.
You're welcome.
We do. Thank you for that. Yeah, I appreciate it. But we've been sort of keeping track of it on the program, but I didn't realize today was the day. Thank you. We'll be right back. Missed my opening rant today? It's usually published over at HartmannReport.com, where you can read it and share it with your friends for free. Check it out, HartmannReport.com. They called it blood libel, what the Germans were doing against the Jews, claiming that they were using the blood of Christian children to make their matzah. We've got a new blood libel now here in the United States. J.D. Vance and Donald Trump lying through their teeth, arguing that black Haitian immigrants to the United States, legal immigrants with green cards in this little town in Ohio, are eating pets. And this is another libel that goes way back. In the 1890s, people were claiming German and Dutch immigrants were eating pets. Then they claimed in the 1880s, and actually as recently as last year, a restaurant got shut down in California because of claims that they were serving pets. They weren't. But it was an Asian restaurant. This is just evil stuff, these lies and spreading this kind of hate. And this is now the strategy that the Republicans are using. There's a whole article about it at HartmannReport.com, Hate as a Political Weapon. Check it out.
Every 80 years it comes around. Heavy boots make a marching sound. They call it order, they call it law, but I've seen what that order costs. kings and bosses, flags and fear. They say be quiet, don't stand here. But every lie they dress as truth gets torn apart by what we choose. This is the time of choosing now. Stand your ground or take the vow to bow your head and lose your name, or light the fire and face the flame.
24 minutes past the hour. Welcome back. Picking up your calls here. Michael in Gainesville, Florida. Hey, Michael, what's up?
Yeah, hi. The topic is compassion, so it's right up your alley.
Okay.
We
Big fan
need
of compassion.
Well, I know, and we need compassion over condemnation, and maybe to watch in slow motion if it helps, whatever. To watch Bondi and to really see her face and to really hear her shrieks, the shriekiness in her voice, to know that she has and was groomed by the same people she now so creepily and shriekingly defends. It's visible. Trump, the Trump groomed Bondi shriekiness when she defended him. I mean, it literally makes a chill go down your spine when you realize what
it was like North
what you're looking
Korea.
at.
You know, everybody has to praise dear leader. It's like his cabinet meetings. Everybody's got to praise dear leader. Donald Trump.
No, that actually
wants to be
isn't
a
what I'm
dictator.
talking. No, I'm talking about her as a human being. She was one of those little girls that she's been groomed her whole life. She grew up here. This is her town. She's part of this. She was one of the girls who's been groomed, and she's now sitting there facing her groomers. Do you understand? And she sees herself as a survivor, and she looks down at them. That's the detestation you see on her face. Do you understand?
So are you arguing, Michael, that Pam Bondi is the victim of abuse, and she's one of those victims who turns into a victimizer? Well, I think it's like 2 out of 3 American women are victims of abuse as children.
I actually promoted 1 out of 3. And it was pushed throughout all of southern Florida, but I made up that number because I didn't think people would believe the number you just gave, which is, truthfully, it's 2 out of 3, and it affects every aspect of that
2 out of 3
life.
girls and 3 out of 5 boys.
And it is observable.
Yeah.
Both. Yes. Yeah. And it is incredible that it has gone unobserved, and it affects all of society, and Trump is the symptom and the result of that 2 out of 3.
Yeah, well, it may well be. Michael, thank you for the call. I don't want to get into trying to psychoanalyze Pam Bondi personally. I don't, even though I arguably have, I could put on my psychotherapist hat and offer an opinion, but I ain't gonna do it. It's 27 minutes. I see her as a tragic figure, frankly, somebody who has sold her soul in exchange for power and wealth. We'll be right back.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
It's the True People's Media, and I'll be right back with your calls. For our book club today, we're reading Out of the Wreckage, A New Politics for an Age of Crisis by George Monbiot. This is from Chapter 3, Don't Look Back. The political history of the second half of the 20th century could be summarized as the conflict between its 2 great narratives, neoliberalism and social democracy. Social democracy in this era, whose story I briefly summarized in Chapter 1, acquired much of its power and coherence from the thinking of one remarkable man. Across 4 decades, John Maynard Keynes's work dominated economic thought and practice. During the period the French called the Trente Glorieuses, 1945 to 1975, his prescriptions are widely credited with reviving economies and distributing their benefits. That they remain more or less the only mainstream alternative to neoliberalism today reveals a remarkable stagnation of both thought and ambition. The first and most obvious problem with an attempt to use Keynesian social democracy as a core political narrative is that the story is more than 80 years old. Political stories need to be renewed. If politics does not feel fresh, it struggles to kindle the imaginative excitement from which hope arises. The second problem is that the surviving enthusiasm for Keynes among mainstream parties is highly selective. It has been reduced in most cases to lowering interest rates when economies are sluggish and engaging in tepid counter-cyclical public spending, which means injecting public money into the economy when unemployment is high or recession threatens. Other Keynesian measures, such as raising taxes when an economy grows quickly to dampen the boom-bust cycle, the fixed exchange rate system, capital controls, and a self-balancing global banking system, an international clearing union, all of which Keynes saw as essential complements to these policies, have been discarded and forgotten. Not only does this ensure that the rich old story has been reduced to two thin chapters, whose loss of context destroys their narrative power, but the absence of other Keynesian measures, as well as changed global circumstances, weakens the effectiveness of the remaining elements of policy. Let me give you an example. In 2009, in the hope of boosting the economy in the wake of the financial crash, the British government spent £300 million on stimulating sales of new cars. Under its scrappage scheme, if car owners traded in their old vehicles for new ones, the government, with the help of manufacturers, knocked £2,000 off the price. This lavish program was partly justified as an environmental measure, though it was clear from the outset that it would lead to a rise in environmental impacts as the materials and energies used in manufacturing new cars outweigh any likely savings from better fuel economy. Its primary purpose was to boost British car assembly plants and protect the jobs of their workers. But European state aid rules forbade such schemes from discriminating between cars made in Britain and cars made abroad. British car parts assembled only some 15% of the vehicles sold in that country, which meant that 85% of the benefit went to car plants in Germany, Japan, and other manufacturing nations. We could see this spending as foreign aid to some of the world's richest nations. The current pattern of globalization, which developed partly as a result of abandoning the fixed exchange rates and capital controls that Keynes advocated, ensures that this problem is to some extent repeated wherever Keynesian stimulus spending is applied. It might lead to a general, if scarcely detectable, global economic uplift, but the domestic impact will necessarily be weaker than Keynes intended. This issue is compounded by the phenomena of job-free growth, caused in part by the automation now spreading into almost every economic sector. Today, governments pull the starter cord, spending public money and cutting interest rates, that ignited the economy and employment in the past, only to discover that it snaps before the motor fires. Two feeble measures, removed from the rich framework of thought and narrative in which they were once embedded, have little chance of sustaining a political revival. Another issue is that the troubles that beset the Keynesian model in the 1970s have not disappeared. While the oil embargo of '73 was the immediate trigger for the lethal combination of high inflation and high unemployment, called stagflation back then, that Keynesian policies were almost powerless to counteract. Problems with the system had been mounting for years. Falling productivity and rising costs push inflation, wages and prices pursuing each other upwards, were already beginning to erode support for Keynesian economics. Most importantly, perhaps, the program had buckled in response to the political demands of capital. Strong financial regulations and controls on the movement of money began to weaken in the 1950s as governments started to liberalize financial markets. Richard Nixon's decision in '71 to suspend the convertibility of dollars into gold destroyed the system of fixed exchange rates on which much of the success of Keynes's policies depended. The capital controls introduced to prevent financiers and speculators from sucking money out of balanced Keynesian economies collapsed. Today, it's hard to find a mainstream politician in Europe or the Anglophone nations, including those who call themselves Keynesians, prepared to call for their reintroduction. We cannot hope that the strategies deployed by global finance that helped to destroy the efficacy of Keynes's measures in the '70s will be unlearned. If the soft Keynesianism proposed by opponents of neoliberalism is to amount to anything but tinkering, it has to confront a wider set of challenges than most of its advocates have yet been prepared to acknowledge. But perhaps the biggest problem residual Keynesianism confronts in the 21st century is that when it does work, it collides headfirst with the environmental crisis. The book, Out of the Wreckage by George Monbiot. Help support progressive radio. If you're listening to us on a commercial station, call their advertisers and let them know you're listening. If you're listening to us on Pacifica, one of our many nonprofit stations, please support them when they do their fundraising drives. Thanks for supporting Progressive Talk Radio and tag You're It. Way back in 1964, when Lyndon Johnson signed the Civil Rights Act, the Voting Rights Act, the Republicans started this rant about how the election of 1960, Jock Kennedy stole that election, and there's voter fraud in America. And it became a thing. They started this thing called Operation Eagle Eye. William Rehnquist was running it in Arizona, trying to intimidate Hispanics and African Americans into not voting, essentially. They have now used this claim that non-citizens are voting, this voter fraud claim, in virtually every red state to make it harder to vote, to purge people off the voting rolls, to make people's votes not counted with their exact signature matches. It's a scam. It's a grift that they've been running for 60 years, and the American media won't call them out on it. There's a whole piece about it called Trump and the GOP's Big Lie 2.0 over at HartmannReport.com. Please check it out. You'll find it fascinating. Welcome back, 35 minutes past the hour. Picking up your calls here. Bill in Clifton, New Jersey. Hey, Bill, what's on your mind today?
Well, hi.
Hey.
Well, if I could just say first, you reminded me of something I actually thought of last week. If Trump hadn't been born with $300 million in his diaper, he would have probably been a low-level mob boss with a family.
I doubt he even would have been a boss.
Well, he's never been an employee, so there's no way. I don't know.
Yeah.
But that's part of the problem is he can't relate because, he can just take his papers home. Doesn't realize what's what. What I was calling you about is a small story. In the 11th century, there was a pope who was trying to organize one of the first crusades, and he couldn't get enough people to volunteer. So he said, okay, anybody who volunteers to go is going to get into heaven. I forget what they call that.
Pope Pius. It was dispensation, yeah.
Right. What Martin Luther fought against.
Mm-hmm.
But so when he said that, he had thousands of people show up.
Yep.
And when they went out, they killed and burned and raped anybody and anything because they realized they're going to go to heaven anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So when you promise somebody that they have going to get a pardon or they're immune or something like that, that's what happens. They think, whatever I do, I can do anything. Mm-hmm. And that's one of the reasons why these untrained and masked, people are out there doing this. And they have all sorts of sort of background. They're not checked out to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
And in New York, there used to be a law you couldn't wear a mask unless it was Halloween because they wanted to be able to identify people on the street. And people who covered their faces unless it was a surgical mask were considered to be crooks.
Yeah, well, historically, it's the criminals who hide their faces.
Right. And anybody who is official can walk around amongst the people they live with and be identified of what they are. Like the local cop on the block and things like that.
Sure.
And there's no affinity between the civilians and this mob of untrained, crazy people.
Yeah.
And common sense tells you don't do those things to people. And people have a presumption of innocence once you question them. Or what they should have is a list of people to go after, and then instead of grabbing people off the street randomly, and go to them and, as you said, respectfully deal with them.
Yeah.
But
It's how Obama did it. It's how Biden did it. It's actually how it was done during the first Trump administration. ICE was behaving reasonably.
Right. And we're talking about a misdemeanor.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it's not even a crime. It's a civil offense. ICE enforces civil law. FBI enforces criminal law. Right. I mean, it's a whole different category of stuff. Bill, well said. Thank you very much for that. Celeste in Detroit, Michigan. Hey, Celeste, what's on your mind today?
You already covered the part about the Maroon family meeting with.
Is that how it's pronounced, Maroon?
Maroon, yeah. He also owned the train station before the current ownership is Ford.
Oh, interesting.
And he interfered with the train station significantly. But I thought the only other thing I could add is even though Canada paid for the bridge, Michigan does own half of it.
Really? How? How does that work?
I can't remember the name of the agreement, but it was an agreement between Michigan and Canada.
So I'm guessing it's not actual ownership. It's like responsibility for the traffic on half of it, that sort of thing? Enforcement, keeping it clean, getting the snow off it, stuff like that?
Right. But the corruption, with the recent statements that Trump made, I don't think that's a coincidence.
Yeah, no, it's I mean, when one billionaire meets with another billionaire and suddenly federal policy changes to meet the needs of the billionaires rather than the average people who need to use a bridge to get to work, it's pretty pathetic, Celeste.
Right. And the Ambassador Bridge is so old, and they only have one lane each way open. It's so run down and old. So yeah. So it's a real backup.
Yeah, it's been, I think the last time Louise and I drove over the Ambassador Bridge was in 1971 or 2, when we moved to Detroit after we got married.
Right.
But, so it's been a long time. But thanks for the update. Thanks for the information for Detroit and for helping me pronounce correctly that billionaire family. I just didn't know.
I know how it's spelled. It looks like it, yeah.
Yeah. Thanks a lot, Celeste. Good talking to you.
All right.
Yep. Paul in Woodinville, Washington. Hey, Paul, what's on your mind today?
So, hi, Tom. May I, before I get started, make a quick announcement?
By all means.
My colleague and Attorney Walt Kruger and myself will be holding a Constitution Forum. This is for people in the Seattle area. A Constitution Forum on Saturday, this coming Saturday, February 14th, at the Kirkland Library in the meeting room. It's following the protest. The protest is from 11:30 to 1, and then people can go get lunch, and then the forum starts at 2, from 2 to 3:30. This is people on the east side, Bellevue, Kirkland, Redmond, Woodinville, probably the most interested. The meeting room, we have room for apparently about 100 if it's all standing, but 50, 55 if they're seated.
Is there a website?
The format is, because it's an hour and a half, I will start by doing, it's once a month, second Saturday of each month.
Okay.
I will start by doing some Constitution 101, basically how to read the Constitution, how to interpret it. This month I will be doing powers that are not stated, such as the judicial review, the presidential executive orders, and then the necessary and proper clause, and how it all ties in with the supremacy clause and what that really means. And then each month, Walt and I work on a project which we'll present. And this month is an amendment to deal with the Citizens United.
That's fascinating stuff, Paul. I hope you're going to record this and put it up on YouTube.
It's already, the last month is already on. Last month was the first one. It's on YouTube. Last month we did discussed an amendment on amending the pardon power of the president, which was a great one.
Yeah. How do people find it?
I can send you the link. I think I'm not one. I guess. Geez, I should have asked Walt this. It's on YouTube. Maybe Paul Richardson and Walt Kruger, Kirkland Library, Constitution Forum. Those are things you could search for on YouTube.
All right, announcement made. What did you call about? Or was that it? I said your announcement has been made. Did you call about something specific?
Yeah, okay. One of the callers was talking about the protests and saying that, how the protesters have been getting kind of in ISIS space. And it kind of led this discussion to being, that the protests have been about ICE. That's not true. Protests were going on months before. Remember, ICE only got out in force after the big bill was passed on the 4th of July, because that's where the funding came from. And they weren't really out in force. It took about a month or 6 weeks to get them out. But protests, the No Kings type, remember, the first No Kings was on June 14th of 2025. It was 3 weeks before the big bill was passed, and I was going to them back in April. So it was ICE that was sent out there to quell these protests. So that caller was really, that's what the media has been doing. That's the propaganda. And that's what the administration has been doing.
So are you saying that ICE was not wearing masks prior to basically the 4th of July?
Yeah, I don't think they were. I don't remember, because you know what? My partner is a bus driver in Seattle, and it was end of July when she started coming home and saying, I'm spotting these black SUVs with blacked out windows driving around. You know, when you drive a bus route, you see the same people on the road every day.
Sure.
So she says, I think this is ICE. And she said, I've seen them get out, a couple of them get out in a parking lot and talk to each other. They're dressed in camo and stuff like that. And then it was essentially the end of September and October that they were way out in force. And when we drove down to Portland in mid-October to see some friends play music, we said, well, let's see if we start picking them up as we get into by the time we got down to Vancouver, Washington, they were swarming all over the road. And I said, yeah, they're not pretty much in between. We see a few, but they were all over here in the Seattle area, and then the east side where I live, Kirkland, Woodinville, Bothell, Bellevue, but they were not out. That was not a concern that I remember until after the big bill was passed, and that's when they got the big $75 billion slush fund.
Well, thank you for clarifying all of our memories, including mine. I appreciate that, Paul.
Yeah, thanks, Tom.
Thank you. I always learn something from you. And, you know, if you get a website for your lecture series, call us back and let us know the URL, okay?
Okay, sure, thanks.
All right, thanks, Paul. It's 45 minutes past the hour.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit thomhartmann.com for audio and video archives.
It's the place where smart people get their news. We'll be right back. And welcome back, Gar in Atlanta, Georgia. Hey, Gar, what's on your mind today?
How you doing today, Tom?
Good. Good.
Have a very interesting show.
Thank you.
We'll try to make this clear as possible. You talk about $1 billion, $1 billion. Okay, I heard it put this way. I think I mentioned to you before on your show that if a person spent $1,000 a day, it would take them 500,000 years to spend $1 billion.
Wow.
And I heard it put another way, too. If you stack the $1,000 bills on top of each other, to make $1 million, it'd be 4 inches high. To make $1 billion, it'd be 18 inches high. And if you stack them $1,000 bills on top of each other to make $1 trillion, it'd be 65 miles high. The difference between $1 trillion and $1 billion.
Yeah.
And the book, Stephanie Kelton wrote a book. It's called The Deficit Myth.
Mm-hmm. She's been on this program about it.
Pardon?
She's been on this program about that book several times.
Yeah. I've heard her on different programs many times.
Mm-hmm.
And what caught me, what she said, is when you talk that kind of money, you're talking nothing but a keystroke. Nothing but a keystroke on the computer.
Yeah.
And now when I go shopping, I'm the only one with cash. Everybody got cards. Everything is done on the computer now.
Yeah.
In AI.
Yeah.
And so what I'm trying to get at, what is $1 billion? It's a keystroke. Thank you.
Well, okay. I get it. Gar, thank you. Thanks for the call. Carol in Spirit Lake, Iowa. Hey, Carol, what's on your mind today?
Hi, Tom. I just have one quick observation, and it's about the Epstein files. I just think they are proof positive of one thing, that misogyny is alive and well, especially in the morbidly rich world.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. If we lived in a society that respected women and girls, Donald Trump would not be president. You know, the Access Hollywood tape would have ended it. That would have been the end of it.
Yeah. And I think the whole Epstein thing, we may never hear all of it, but it is huge.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think this is going to be like the Kennedy assassination.
Than we think.
Yeah, you're going to see people like Seth Abramson, you know, these deep research guys. You're going to see them writing books about this for decades.
Oh, yeah, yeah. It's bad.
Yeah. And it's also a reflection on our society and, you know, the coarsest, worst part of our society. I mean, this is arguably the worst sex trafficking or underage sex trafficking ring in the history of the United States, at least that we know of. I'm sure that, you know, this kind of thing's been going on forever, but this is wild stuff.
And all the money helps keep it down.
Yeah.
You know,
because it's rich people. When rich people commit crimes, there's a whole different set of rules that comes into play, both in terms of the law and in terms of publicity, the media.
Yeah, and I don't think it should be referred to as anything that is Democratic or Republican. It's not that.
No, this is
bigger.
This is predators versus prey. This is psychopaths versus the rest of us, and I put Trump in that category intentionally. Carol, thank you for the call. Well said. We'll be right back. It's 10 minutes before the hour. Hey, thanks so much for sharing our program and for reaching out to our stations and sponsors and letting them know that you're listening. It really means a lot to us. When Ronald Reagan took over America in 1981, we handed him a brand gleaming new country. Franklin Roosevelt, Harry Truman, Dwight Eisenhower, Jack Kennedy, they had built America. We had brand new schools, brand new hospitals, brand new interstate highway systems, brand new airports, infrastructure. We were the envy of the world. And then Republicans came along and they said, well, you just cut the top tax rate from 74% down to 27% and everything will trickle down. Instead, what do we get? Billionaires and poverty. They said, hey, just deregulate guns and an armed society is a polite society. Instead, we've got more school shootings than anywhere in the world. They said, just kill off civics and history classes in our schools and it'll liberate our young people to focus on science and math. And now we've got people who don't know how our government works. I mean, it just goes on from there. There's a whole rant about it over at HartmannReport.com titled FDR Saved America, Then the GOP Ripped Us Apart. Check it out. And free shipping. Welcome back. 9 minutes before the hour. Picking up your calls here. Myron in Chicago. Hey, Myron, what's up?
Hey, Tom, how you doing?
Fine.
Thanks for taking my call.
Mm-hmm.
So I just wanted to talk about just a couple of quick things. One, it's like killing me how the Republicans, they blamed Biden for the open borders. How
there was no open border. That's a lie. Trump and Bondi keep saying Biden's open border policy. He did not have an open border policy. Nobody has had an open border policy since the 60s.
No. Right. And they're the ones, like, for the record, Governor Abbott is the one, he was the one that was flying them everywhere. He was flying them through the United States.
Well, I don't know that he was flying them to the United States, but he was certainly sending them up to Massachusetts and Chicago and New York. And LA.
Yeah, chartered Democratic cities.
Yep.
And nobody even mentioned this, and they, at the same time, they're blaming him, and they're sending ICE. They're blaming the whole administration, for their nonsense, for them doing that. My other thing is, it's just a little idea, but maybe it's a way where, like, all of the voters, like everybody, who's just trying to boycott these billionaires like Jeff Bezos and Mark Zuckerberg and all of these, the billionaires, and Walmart for funding Trump, why don't everybody start a crowdfunded superstore? Why, I know it's it would be a little complicated, but, if we get a few organizations together where we can start stores like Walmart, a new e-commerce store like Amazon, and give them some competition where we can actually do a real boycott, for these, and not. No,
I get it. The part of the problem is that we're not enforcing our antitrust laws anymore. So it's so hard to take these guys on. It's why you have, small businesses. The main part of every small town in America, and big towns for that matter, of their main streets used to be locally owned businesses. And now it's all chain stores and national companies because we don't enforce our anti-monopoly laws. And that's another wonderful innovation that Ronald Reagan brought us. In fact, it was in 1983 when he officially stopped enforcing the antitrust laws. Myron, well said. Thank you so much. Nick in Salt Lake City, Utah. Hey, Nick, what's on your mind?
Yeah, I want to ask Thom Hartmann his
That's
opinion.
Me? You're on the air with me?
Hey, Tom, how's it going?
Good. What's up?
I want to ask your opinion on a constitutional amendment for medical freedom.
I don't know what that means. Or I don't know what you mean when you say that. What do you mean?
Well, my top goal is to disable psychiatry, make it so people cannot force psychiatric medication based on circumstances of jurisdiction or custody.
Are you a Scientologist?
No.
Huh. Because that's their big thing, Okay, so why do you, go ahead and make your case.
Well, other people, the vaccine subject will be brought up on the Constitution. A constitutional amendment will involve a lot of debates from a lot of people. It's in the medical field, so it's a big subject. But my top goal is accusation of mental illness. It can really destroy someone's life. It makes people...
But actual mental illness can destroy someone's life, too.
Okay.
I have some friends who have a son who actually killed somebody. He's mentally ill. He's had schizophrenia since he was a teenager. And he actually killed somebody. He served a couple of years in jail. He's back home. They're scared to death he's going to kill them if he doesn't take his meds. Are you saying that they shouldn't be able to get him, on these meds? Actually, Nick, I'm out of time here. We'll have to have this conversation another time. I'm sorry. Thanks so much for being with us today. We'll be back tomorrow, same time, same place. In the meantime, don't forget, democracy is not a spectator sport. It requires all of us. That includes you. So get out there, get active, tag. You're it. Have a great afternoon. Be good to yourself and the folks around you. Stay safe, and I'll catch up with you tomorrow.
You've been listening to Thom Hartmann. For audio and video archives, visit thomhartmann.com.